Easter Sunday, the video Black Griffin, a collective community failure, was released to the critical acclaim of over 100,000 people, which included making the front pages on Reddit. It was a monumental success that raised over $500 for the charity Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network, or RAIN. This wasn't new for me, as making content on dark topics like sex crimes and abuse became a bit of a regular flavor over here. But after covering such topics for over 5 years, it had become very draining to talk about. However, I had known of the story for over a year, and thought with the stakes raised and more victims coming forward, it was the best time to talk about it. After all, other creators had just pulled up to the function with their own coverage that got a positive reception. What's the worst that could happen?
The reason we're starting here, of all places, is because on levels of culpability, just believing a document that's handed to you is something that, generally speaking, a lot of YouTubers do, trusting that the vetting has already been done for them. In fact, this is KP's defense for why she fucked this up. Much like the allegations against Saberspark, there is no evidence for this. And even in the document, it is noted that it can't have been in 2012, because Twitter didn't even add the function to send pictures in DMs until December of 2013. And yet Lazy Bedhead uses the fact the allegations even exist in the first place to try and label Black Griffin a predator. And I'd like you to keep in mind here that Fando themselves admits that they don't have proof behind the Destiny allegations. In fact, they were using those allegations in an attempt to gay up and blackmail Black Griffin. When that didn't work, they released them anyway. One of my major issues, in fact probably my main issue with this story, is the fact that nobody really vetted or checked anybody before running things. For example, Courtney Pete and by extension Lazy Bedhead used Sophie Scruggs as an expert on this community. This lack of vetting isn't just me bitching about standards, it has quite serious implications for these wider stories.
This video is going to serve as 3 things. 1, an apology, and 2, a complete breakdown of everything that's happened from April 20th to now. I will be giving you insights of everything that has happened behind the scenes for what I have proof and access to. Some things are missing, and they're for reasons I'll be giving, but I'm pretty much laying everything out on the table to answer the questions that have been asked and left unanswered. What's going on? What's your response? Why are you doing this? This will serve as that reference point. A lot of the things that have been happening behind the scenes, I am not 100% proud of and will disappoint a lot of you. But I owe it to my friends and audience who have uplifted this platform accountability when I'm in the wrong. Here's the thing a lot of people who are newer might not know about me. I am a one-person show who films, edits, researches, scripts, and posts from an iPhone. And I've been doing it that way since I was 16 years old. So if I fuck up, if a video blows up in my face, if there is a reputational hit, I have to take fault. There's no one else to blame. It's all me. So let me acknowledge the concerns and criticisms of the community and take into consideration the words of my peers, my fans, and maybe people who don't really like me all that much to begin with, because all perspectives are important, regardless if it hurts my feelings or I think it's too mean. But there's that third thing. I've only listed 2, so what else will this video present? What other motives do I have? That third thing will be doing what's right. Words in a YouTube apology video means nothing without action. And the action I've decided to take is revenge. A grooming story in the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic community. Right, okay, cool. Like I haven't heard that one before. Copy, paste story. But a grand conspiracy spanning over 2 decades to take down 2 giant content creators out of jealousy? Now that's a story. And it's a story that needs to be told, because I care far more about the truth being out there than I do a thanks Reddit moment. This shit is bigger than me. It's bigger than anyone could have ever imagined. And I would rather stand by the truth and what's right than to support some petty, jealous motherfuckers who should see to it that everything they've built is burnt to the ground. Also, just ignore all this. I know this looks really dramatic. I'm using this for my Oakburn Opus video. I just didn't want to take this down yet, so this is just here. Also, if this video comes across as like really scripted, it's because it is. I'm not very good at like just going off the cuff and just talking about stuff that's been happening for over the course of 2 months and just kind of remembering it off my head. So the script is just to help me keep focus. This video will be divided into 3 chapters, named after the 3 most important names that I have determined to be the most highly contentious: Black Griffin, ILoveKimPossibleALot, or KP, and Bonk. There's a lot of names that will be thrown around in the midst of these sections, so to make it easy, here's everyone you need to know about. Black Griffin, or Gabriel Brown, is a YouTuber and musician who is married to the My Little Pony voice actress Claire Corlett. His career started in My Little Pony, but evolved over the years on features like Has Been Hotel. Claire Corlett Brown is the voice actress for Sweetie Belle in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. She is married to Gabriel Brown, who she met through her childhood friend, Michelle Creeber. Michelle and the Creebers hosted Gabe in their home whilst under talent contract. She is the voice actress for Apple Bloom and childhood friend of Claire, and considered Gabriel to be like a sibling to her. All 3 of these people are friends with a speculative history together, as Gabe was an adult living with Michelle when she was a minor, and filmed content with Claire when she was underage as well. Ian James Corlett is Claire's father, who has allegations presented by his own daughter of being controlling and abusive. This was backed up in videos created by Cope and Seethe. Beckett's community base comes from an in-between of the art commentary community and the commentary bro sphere, but for the most part will do interviews and present the multiple perspectives of those in the community. One of those interviews features Mr. Enter. Jonathan Rosansky is a cartoon reviewer who's been around since 2013 that does investigations against folks in his community in regards to abusive behaviors, alongside a team of his editors and newly found friends made through his previous investigative works. In June of 2025, John covered the allegations against Saberspark. Stephen Craver is one of the biggest content creators in the community, who was friends with Black Griffin, even going to his wedding, which the defense of and association with was already putting him in hot waters to begin with. Before all this though, Stephen was a face on Everfree Radio before becoming an overarching cartoon reviewer. May of 2025, Stephen had allegations of sexual assault presented by a former friend and cartoon reviewer, ILoveKimPossibleALot. Rachel Cohen presented allegations against a former colleague, Aficionados Chris. Included in that expose were the poorly presented allegations and connections to Chris with DA Games and Saberspark, as well as an allegation of sexual assault, presented anonymously, but then later revealed to be Sonic content creator Emu Emmy. Emmy Jones, or Emily Jones, was already riddled with controversy before coming forward with allegations of rape against Saberspark. Cheating allegations, sex scandals, the whole lot was presented poorly in a video that used Kiwi Farms as a source probably. But Emily's story wasn't just backed by KP. In fact, it was an entire cabal of actors that pulled Emily in certain directions to put out the final statement that exists today. And those names are Courtney Pete, Lily Orchard's sister that directly influenced Emily to remove any mentions of implied consent, convincing even KP that the idea of implied consent is total bullshit. She also made a video on Black Griffin, which featured interviews with KP and Sophie Scruggs, a My Little Pony artist whose work has ended up in official My Little Pony properties like comics and merchandise. For a brief period of time, Sophie shared an account with a user called Bonk, or Helena Hyena. Bonk runs an account called Brony Fandon't, which used to be a roleplay account when they were 15 where they played Screwball. Fandon't has been the main source of information against Black Griffin. However, it should be duly noted that the master document about Gabriel was not created by him. The most contribution to it was sharing it. And archival tweets from his account were featured in the Google Doc for archive purposes. And finally, there is one more name that I don't see a lot of people speak about, but whose association should be more heavily noted. Amy New is the wife of Peter New, the voice actor for Big Macintosh. She also has been talking about the Black Griffin allegations, but also she was one of the people who encouraged Emily to come forward with her claims against Saberspark. There are other names that I haven't mentioned that will also periodically come up, like Phineas, or Wootmaster, or Peter New, or Anthony Gramaglia, or Lyle Convoy, or Katie and Ash from Billy Bust Up, or AC Racebest, or Michelle's parents, or Soul Rock, or Destiny, or the Snapchat victim, or Jai Lim, or James. There's so many people that serve minor roles that will come up, but this presentation will not have them as my full focus. These are the names that matter the most to me. And where do I fall in all of this? Well, that will be explained over the course of this video. But before we go over the timeline of events, I must delay this video one final time for this very important foreword. I want to apologize for the wait time of this response. A lot of things had to occur online and offline before I made any final statement. Primarily assisting in Mr. Enter's coverage, as well as getting Beckett in contact with everyone he needed to speak to for his coverage, as well as making sure he had access to important Discord group chats, figuring out timeline discrepancies, and getting all of the ducks in a row. Certain conversations needed to happen and be recorded, questions needed to be asked, statements needed to come out before I could officially answer any questions. Plus, a lot of offline and pre-planned and unexpected events like a Colossicon trip that I had planned since January, and then I felt like garbage that entire trip and a week after, so I was sick and recovering. And then there were some immediate family concerns after that. And I was just spending a lot of time offline with family and friends because that was really important with my mental health and confidence to return to the platform with a response that is precise, level-headed, and said all of the right things and addresses absolutely everything that is important. Regardless of the circumstances, disappearing entirely without much of an explanation was probably not the right move. And I understand if that brought any instability or concern within my base and even beyond that. Whether I entirely acknowledge this or not, I do have a fan base that does listen to what I have to say and kind of see me as a figurehead, so being silent has only sparked speculation and misinformation spearheading the conversation. And for that, I am truly really sorry. I was trying to be strategic, and I should have just clued in my immediate base on what exactly was happening, so they didn't think I was just trying to run away from everything. The reason why I am doing something is pretty simple. It's because I value the truth, and I am honored to respect the evidence. I know what I have to do. I have to do the right thing, and the right thing is being as truthful and as transparent as possible. So let's begin. I would like to begin this section by explaining how I learned about the Black Griffin story, as well as just kind of explain who I am and why I do content like this to begin with. It all started back in 2024. I was working on the Star Giant production story, which also has elements of grooming and abuse. As many of you who've been watching me for a while, sex scandal stories and online abuse has been a constant here. I've been doing this for a while, and for the longest time, I didn't really understand, why? This stuff makes me fucking depressed. I'm fascinated by it, but it hits so close to home that it's also, incredibly difficult and uncomfortable for me to talk about. So, why do I cover topics of this nature, so often? I think it comes from coping. To be perfectly blunt, the rebrand of this channel from anti-SJW to advocacy comes from an atonement of my past, as well as a lack of direction in my life. Before Lazy Bedhead became what it is today, It was an anti-SJW skeptic channel, and part of the anti-SJW sphere was leaning into right-wing politics. The specific fraction of that space that I fell into was a stepping stone into the alt-right. Part of being in the alt-right pipeline is how you address sexual abuse as more of an attack on men than it is a serious threat towards women. A lot of those in the space would deny sexual abuse or claim that most sexual abuse occurs due to something the victim is doing. So for an example, you know how Jordan Peterson would argue that like women who are sexually harassed in the workplace are sexually harassed because they wear makeup, and makeup is sexually provocative and signals to other male coworkers that a woman is sexually attracted to them?
Can men and women work together in the workplace?
Yes, I do it.
How do you know?
Because I work with a lot of women.
Right. Well, it's been happening for what, 40 years? And things are deteriorating very rapidly at the moment in terms of the relationships between men and women. Is there sexual harassment in the workplace? Yes. Should it stop? That'd be good. Will it? Well, not at the moment it won't, because we don't know what the rules are. Here's a rule. How about no makeup in the workplace? Why should you wear makeup in the workplace? Isn't that sexually provocative?
No.
It's not?
No.
Well, what is it then? What's the purpose of makeup? Why do you make your lips red? Because they turn red during sexual arousal. That's why. Why do you put rouge on your cheeks? Same reason.
I mean, look.
How about high heels?
What
are they
What
for?
about high heels?
What about them? They're there to exaggerate sexual attractiveness. That's what high heels do. Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't use sexual displays in the workplace. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that that is what they're doing.
Yeah, that's where I was at. That is what I genuinely believed, that most women who speak up were lying or were asking for it. That's how I felt for most of my high school years. And, you know, as a 16-year-old in the content space, seeing, you know, the Slazo story unfold, as well as Spoctor when he actually did have like false allegations, to then pro Jared and then Quite, it just reconfirmed that horrible worldview. When I went to college, I knew I wanted to do something with art, but I also became like really fascinated with like psychology and sociology and law. And during those years, I finally shaped those like hyperfixations and special interests into what I actually wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be an art therapist that worked with sexual abuse survivors. College educated me on a lot of things revolving around this topic. Mainly that people who lie about sexual assault is actually incredibly rare. I learned what perfect victim mentality was and how damaging that is. I learned what the legal statistics actually were of sexual abuse and how underreported and underrepresented survivor stories were. I was becoming really passionate about this. It was like my calling. I can actually help people the right way instead of just being a Twitter doubter forever. And then COVID hit, and my dreams died. Financially speaking, I could have returned to schooling after the lift of lockdown, but my life had changed so much at that point. I was in a new relationship. I worked factory jobs. I moved out, all of which drained those savings. And YouTube was more of like a side hobby that I'd sometimes do, and then I would just forget about it. In 2023, we got to a point where my partner wanted me to pursue YouTube full time. And since I had all this back pocket knowledge on how to research these topics and still maintained my interest in like just how human behavior is, I thought, you know, why the hell not? It'd be a good way to utilize that dead dream of mine. That's sort of like a condensed version of how we got here, and why I even bring any of this up to begin with is because throughout the duration of the last 2 months, I recognized an issue that it took all of this to finally get me to realize. Throughout the duration of my time going full throttle on YouTube, I had gone so far from one side of the spectrum, you know, people lie about rape all the time, to the polar opposite of believe victims no matter what. When what should have happened is that I should have ended up somewhere in the middle. And I thought by understanding why people are like this, that was at least giving them a fair shake. Not trying to like necessarily find an excuse, but understanding people better. What I've witnessed in the many years watching commentary content and like, you know, being in the niche myself, you kind of forget that the person that you're talking about is a person with maybe mental health reasons or social reasons why they are the way that they are. So I thought to offer like a different kind of content to stand out more, we would try to explore that. Have conversations about why people are like this. Not speaking necessarily like as an expert, just trying to understand people better. And that became the standard for a while, but over time, even that kind of got sidelined. And all of that came to a head with my Black Griffin video. Like I'd mentioned, I learned about this story over a year ago. I was working on the Star Giant production story, and my buddy Phineas and I were just going through the rundown of what that was all about. We watched one of her tier list videos of cartoon reviewers, and Saberspark was on that list, listed pretty high. And I had mentioned liking his content in the past, kind of being like on and off it over the years. And Finn had said that he didn't like Saberspark because he was friends with someone who met his wife when she was a minor and he was an adult. Obviously, this very much floored me, as Saber has been someone who's spoken out against this kind of thing before in his content, so needless to say, I was very confused. So I briefly was educated about it. I read like a wiki page about Gabe or something, and I thought, man, that's really weird. But since we're already in the Star Giant rabbit hole, that's where my main interest was focused on, and even that became like a stressor in its own right, because midway through interviews and production, I moved, and it took like a few months to feel like really comfortable in this new space. The video was split in 2 parts, which wasn't the original plan. I actually almost lost footage throughout that process, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to like re-record or get any of that back, because none of my recording stuff was even set up at that point. Then there was the re-edit and the final cut, and it all just kind of resulted in me just forgetting about the Black Griffin thing. So a year goes by, and Jenny Nicholson is retweeting a Google document about Black Griffin that features even more allegations against him. And soon after that, Courtney Pete puts out a video. Courtney and I connected back when I had Twitter around March of last year. We had a back and forth in DMs, and we followed each other for a little bit. We had a mutual respect for each other, but we weren't friends, really, just kind of like acquaintances in the same field of content creation. Hell, by the time her Black Griffin video came out, I hadn't really spoken to Courtney in like a year, but I have this video sent to me, and it reminded me of the story, and I'm like, oh yeah, I heard about this story over a year ago. And watching her coverage made me realize it went far deeper, and it's been an ongoing conversation for the past decade. Plus, the stakes were higher at that point. He didn't just meet his wife when she was a kid, he was now accused of exposing himself to 2 people when they were minors. So this has rapidly developed over the past year since I had heard about it, and I thought, maybe I should look into it. Maybe I should make a video. Raise some money for a charity I thought could be helpful. Because I always wanted to do that with my platform, but I was always kind of destitute myself in cash that I needed to be in a financially good place before making huge donations. I think the only way to talk about this video is to weigh out the pros and cons. There's some things I stand by it. Obviously, not everything is like 100% solid, so we should address what is correct and what wasn't. For the positives, I think this is the most organized video on the topic. It goes in chronological order, there are chapters, so it's easy to follow. I present mostly everything. There was a first draft from Billy Bust Up that I missed, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. If you've never heard of the story or who these people are up until this video, it serves at least as a good rundown. I think my video was the first and only one that actually came out and presented criticisms of Brony Fandom. Other videos that came out at the time either wouldn't mention Brony Fandom and just refer to the document, or they would feature his tweets without much critique of the presentation or how he conducted himself. And I thought it was necessary to talk about because I thought that a criticism was needed. I mean, you're talking about like really serious shit. You kind of gotta be acting better than this. I think the editing was pretty good. It's definitely one of my better looking videos. I think it offered an outsider's perspective looking into everything, which is the position of like how most viewers are. Hell, half of my comments that I got on that video were just like, I don't know any of these people or what any of this is about, but needless to say, I am interested. It might have been easier to engage with as someone who, like, isn't in the know, watching someone who also isn't in the know look over all this stuff. It just makes it more relatable, I guess. I feel like most people forget this part of the coverage, but there was a nuance there, like at the first half of the video. I gave a lot of slack to the claims with Michelle because I just didn't think they made a lot of sense for her to have also been groomed, because, like, if that were the case, wouldn't she have gotten married to Gabe? Now, it has been speculated for a decade, given that Gabe was 22 and Michelle was 13 at the oldest, that this was a grooming relationship. And from all accounts, including Michelle's, this doesn't appear to be the case, or at the very least, there's not enough evidence to say for absolute certainty. Even if it was and Michelle doesn't recognize it, there's not a lot of physical proof that this was grooming. I mean, sure, I think it is fair to be suspect of a relationship forming between a 13-year-old and a 22-year-old with completely different power imbalances. One being a voice actress on a prominent TV show with a fandom that Gabe was a part of, but also Black Griffin being a popular personality in said fandom based on her show. I mean, this is a weird friendship, sure, especially given that this was only really set up by Michelle's mother reaching out and homing Gabriel. Is it possible? Sure, but based on Michelle's own testimony, that just wasn't what appears to be happening in her own personal assessment looking back on it as an adult. I also said that I respected Claire's decision to stand by her husband and not identify as a victim. I mean, I suppose I'd understand if it was just Michelle and Claire, because they both choose to say that they were never victims of Gabriel, which is completely their decision, and even if I still have my concerns, I do recognize their agency and I respect their decision. But it kind of got lost in that second half. I think once it got to, like, the Destiny stuff, that's when I said a lot of things I absolutely shouldn't have. So let's segue into the negatives. Because my strategy was so curated towards being like an outsider looking in, I didn't talk to anyone involved in the story. I didn't talk to Michelle, or Claire, or Destiny, or Sophie Scruggs, or Brony Fandon't. And this is pretty common in commentary. Not everyone does interviews and just talks about the publicly available information, but no one was asking for Claire or Michelle's opinion at all. And when people like Bonk did have private conversations, he would just lash out and get angry at Claire. Now, I did have an opportunity, like, really early on to talk to Bonk, but due to his past that I presented in my video and just his attitudes towards Claire, I didn't feel comfortable doing so. A lot of the reasons I didn't talk to folks is just because a lot of these people are on Twitter. I don't have Twitter for very, very good reasons. I don't think I need to explain what one of those are. Honestly, if I did have Twitter, this video probably would have looked a lot different. Like, I don't even think any of this would have ever happened. Maybe. Despite my respect for Michelle and Claire's decision, I still said a lot of shit that I probably shouldn't have that undermined that respect. Like saying, I am 23, and how old are you, sweetheart? I am 14 years old. I'm gonna make you my bride. What? I'm gonna make you my daddy-in-law. Hey, yo. I hope for just, Claire's sake that she's happy. Because although she may have been the lucky minor that got to be the Lucas to Gabe's Onision, that's pretty bad. I'm really sorry for that one. It's like saying I respect people with autism and then immediately afterward calling them the R word. It doesn't mesh. It doesn't work. There's also no indication that the main whistleblower that's been compiling the evidence against Black Griffin, that being Pony Fandon't, has had any contact with Ian Corlett. I also thought people like Sophie and KP were in some form a point of expertise, when they really weren't. If you were to look back at Courtney's video, she interviews both of them and platforms them as if they're in the know. Like, they're experts. They are the general consensus of the community when, like, they're both crazy people. I kind of took the Google document as gospel. I mean, sure, there's some good points of contention. like the DeviantArt comments, even if this document, and to an extent, even if Bonk says something I can somewhat agree with, too much of their compiling and analysis is too much of a mixed bag. And when you're making serious claims like this, you cannot be a mixed bag. You have to know your shit. So much of that document, in hindsight, either doesn't provide an alternative perspective, relies heavily on quantity over quality, and straight up just adds things in there that aren't proof of anything. So now that we've self-reflected on that content, let's talk about why it's gone. After Beckett's video, The Shaming of Saberspark, where we get to hear from Michelle and Claire for the first time, and I listened to Beckett's critiques and even talked to Beckett privately to understand what all of his issues were with the coverage. And after doing so, I concede that he makes a better argument. With an exception to a few things. I am not bringing this up as to, like, push for anything. I just want to understand, like, where Michelle and Claire are coming from and, like, what explanations are there for, like, some of the stuff that just goes directly against what they're saying in Beckett's video. Michelle claims that Gabe would not have considered Claire his friend. In fact, he was annoyed when Claire got his phone number.
We've calculated now that Gabe and Claire met outside of conventions roughly 6 to 7 times. I know Gabe's definition of friends. I know he would not have considered Claire a friend because he would consider somebody a friend that he had, you know, contact with, phone number. He only had Claire's phone number, I don't know, some point like 2017-ish because one of her parents gave him, or no, one of her parents gave Claire Gabe's number, and that actually made Gabe really uncomfortable. And I was there when he first received a text from her and he was like, oh God, why did they give Claire my number? I don't want her to have my number.
And I find this claim really interesting because not only did these two constantly reply to each other on Twitter, a platform with private direct messaging, so like, if Claire really wanted to get a hold of Gabe without his direct phone number, she could have just done it through Twitter DMs, or just replying to him constantly on Twitter because they just did that all the time. Also, Gabe is literally right here saying that he's friends with all 3 of the Cutie Mark Crusaders. Both Claire and Michelle would have been 17, and Claire would have been 17 here as well, posting to Instagram calling Gabe her friend. Well, actually, she calls him a loser, but obviously if she's married to the guy, she must not think he's that much of a loser. I am more than willing to just accept that they were really good friends through, like, working on My Little Pony, you know, like, work constituents. I don't doubt Claire's claims that Gabe was far more professional to her than, say, like, a lot of other bronies. Like, for example, I just want to play this clip.
All right, so I'm pretty sure you're aware of Princess Celestia being portrayed as a tyrant, an internet troll, and, God forbid, a molester. And Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy, on occasion...
No.
I'm canceling this question.
So I'm going to let you know from where I stand, the darker side of the fandom is not part of what I will talk about.
Yeah, so that's a grown-ass man asking that question to a 14-year-old Michelle on stage. You know, in comparison to this, I think Gabe was actually pretty normal. And that's what I think the Black Griffin story should have been about. You know, aside from the conversation of, like, how fucked victims can be and, like, how often community and law enforcement can fail them, I also think that there should have been a conversation about, like, things being normalized when they really should not have been. Maybe that conversation, like, paired with the story of Black Griffin could have made for, like, a better video and made this case a lot stronger. The My Little Pony community online was, like, so anti-drama that a lot of the things just kind of slid under the radar when it really should have been called out. Nazism, Fulcon, the whole Toon Critic thing for a lot of people was just kind of concluded as,
if we withhold forgiveness, it does not harm the wrongdoer in any way. I realize that forgiveness is not, and never was, for the benefit of the wrongdoer. It is for our own benefit. It is what enables us to finally release the anger, the resentment, the hurt, the poison that slowly turns our hearts black.
Like, it's just kind of fucking weird. And a lot of the things in the Black Griffin story, I have a moral issue with. I just don't think it's normal to meet your future spouse when they're a minor and you're an adult. Like, if I were to put myself in that situation, I just don't think I would do it. Like, I have a sibling who's a minor, right? They're 16. If one of their 16-year-old friends met me and started talking to me, and then they turn 18, and I immediately was like, I'm gonna hit that, I think my parents would disown me. And I know that that's probably personally really offensive towards Claire, and I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be offensive. It's just that this is my channel, and what I do on this platform a lot is kind of give my opinion on my morals and tell people what those are. And this is just one of those things I morally just don't feel comfortable with. And I mean, I get it. It's just my opinion. No one asked, really. So I am sorry. I'm not claiming that, like, Gabe is legally in the wrong. Morally, I just don't think I can get behind that. That's all. I just think morally it's just kind of odd. I also don't think it's normal for industry moguls to house a random internet musician to live with them and their 13-year-old child. I don't think it's normal to call a fan of your music baby, honey, or bablet on DeviantArt when they're a minor. I think all of that is just really fucking weird. And if that was Brony Fandone's argument, I don't think a lot of people would, like, necessarily disagree. However, what Bonk wants to do is not only inflate these moral issues in terms of, like, a legal matter, but now they want to fight with Claire and Michelle when they don't identify as victims. Bonk even goes as far as to call them just as awful as Gabe, and I don't see how that helps anyone. Why doesn't Bonk just, like, assist more with Destiny and the Snapchat victim? Why not, like, help them get their missing evidence instead of just relying on their testimony alone? As much as testimony is important evidence as far as the law is concerned, it more so counts as circumstantial evidence than anything else. I mean, Destiny and this other victim, both of their stories are strikingly really similar, and if it does establish a pattern of behavior, that's great, but I think people are just asking for more, and I can't say that I necessarily blame them. I think the biggest problem with my video was, like, seeing Destiny come forward and seeing her just get tossed to the side. It got me so worked up at just how she was being treated that I just thought that was enough to crusade on. And sure, I can get mad at that all I want. I think it's really shitty. And even though I do specify it's just an allegation, it doesn't help to say that and then also say this. Now, since this was when Destiny was 13 years old, hindsight is 2020, so none of the chats or this dick pic was ever documented or screenshots taken. So, for now, these are just allegations from memory. Although, I do think this testimony coming forward does sort of confirm the sneaking suspicion that people have had about Gabe for years up until this point. Since the removal of my coverage, a lot of people have speculated that the reason why is because I was threatened legally. This is not true. I've never been slapped with any legal notice. Claire has never reached out to sue me. I was never asked to do anything. No one asked me to take it down. I just did it myself. I want my content to be two things: helpful and solid. Is my coverage helpful? Sure. To anyone who is unfamiliar with the story, maybe it helps the outsiders who have no idea who anyone is. But is it helpful to Michelle and Claire, the voices that actually matter? No. If anything, it actually really hurts them. And for that, I am really, really sorry. I'm really sorry that I didn't speak to either one of you. I just didn't have the ability to, and I wish I was able to. So please accept a more public means of apologizing. I should have been far more charitable and respectful of your stance, and I'm sorry for not taking your perspective into consideration. Is my content solid? Well, without Michelle and Claire's perspective, no, not really. There are certain parts that I do stand by, like criticisms of certain people and morality, like I can play moral high horse all I want, but nobody asks and nobody cares. But certain things were taken at face value when they should have been thoroughly examined. It's too much of a mixed bag, and for not doing my due diligence, I'm really, really sorry. My video should have concluded on something that wasn't so definitive. My final thoughts on Gabriel C. Brown should have been like a maybe. The thing is, I'm still like morally opposed to a lot of the things that he's done and how similar Destiny and the Snapchat victim stories are, and with the DeviantArt comments, I'm just not comfortable with like 100% saying he's innocent or 100% guilty. When I first made my video, I came at it being really certain that he was, but after talking to Beckett and listening to the criticisms of the community, I'm just not really sure. I just think that Gabe is the result of a community that normalized things that shouldn't have been. I mean, believe it or not, the grooming claims of like Michelle and Gabe actually come from years of the community actively shipping them together. Not speaking out against their relationship, but actively like wishing they would become an item. In Michelle's testimony, when she's talking about like all of these gross comments that her parents had to see, it wasn't about grooming allegations. It was all of these grown-ass people online shipping a 16-year-old with a grown-ass man. That's not normal. The fact that people had conversations justifying their ship of these real people, one of which was a minor and the other was an adult, is really fucking weird. But that's just how the community was, and it's really fucked. To Claire and Michelle, the video I made caused more harm than intended. It platformed Bonk and Sophie in a way that treated them as people with integrity and worthy of criticism when they should have been worthy of condemnation. And for not doing that, I am so sorry. That's why I took the video down, because it hurt those girls, and I don't want to hurt anybody. I just want to do what's right, what I think is right, and I guess I'm doing that now, but this whole thing goes so much deeper than any of us could have imagined. Brony Fandon't and the people behind this thing as an entity expands further than just Gabe. So let's talk about Saberspark.
For some reason, people think I'm unqualified to do this.
You know, I think they might have been onto something.
The same day my Black Griffin video dropped, I was connected to ILoveKimPossibleALot through our mutual friend, Phineas. KP had been working on some big video that she'd been brewing up since September of last year. She needed voice lines and asked if I could read a reply email from DA Games. Here's how I usually go about like providing voice work in content creation. I'm very indiscriminate with who I work with, unless that person wants me to, like, read something that, like, strictly goes against my morals. Like, I'm not gonna, like, provide voice work for, like, example, if someone was making, like, a pro-map video or something and was, like, advocating for adults to date minors and they want me to, like, voice something, I'm not gonna provide my voice in that. Like, that's a very extreme example, but like, I have standard. If someone needs a voice line, I usually do it pro bono. I don't really care much for voice work. I just see it as another way to like network, expand my reach, make connections, and be helpful to those in my niche. And besides, I'm just a YouTuber. I'm not a voice actor. I don't have rates because voice acting is not my job. It's video creation. Voice acting and cameo work just ends up being a bonus. I worked with other content creators and featured in larger videos in the past, so I didn't think this would be any different. But there was another reason why I wanted to talk to KP. When the Black Griffin story was in full swing, KP was reaching out to content creators through mutuals to find people who would cover the story. This was when she had Bonk in her Discord server, working with and getting more details of what the allegations were and helping the victims. So KP was working on the stuff surrounding DA Games that she didn't really have the time to talk about Black Griffin, so she started reaching out to other content creators. Funnily enough, one of her contacts that she tried getting involved in this whole thing was Animat, the fedora guy. Random ass choice, I know. But the one who ended up taking the bait first was Courtney Pete. Courtney's video is interesting for two reasons. For one, KP is interviewed in said video, which made me believe that she was closer to the Black Griffin story than she actually was. In reality, the only reason she was involved was because she was friends with Saberspark, who was friends with Black Griffin, who Courtney heavily criticizes. And according to even KP herself, Courtney is involved, and she's been calling Saber worse than Gabe publicly for a reason. Now, I should reiterate this for the record. Neither KP nor our mutual Phineas asked me to make my Black Griffin video. I did that entirely on my own after reading the master document and thought there was enough interesting stuff in there for me to talk about. I only found out about KP's involvement through Courtney's video, and even then, when we did get in contact, we didn't even really talk about Black Griffin. She just wanted me to do some voice work. However, what really made me want to speak to KP was some comments that she left on my Black Griffin video. Great video. Sorry I couldn't be of more help. Dealing with more than one gross person at the moment. XD. Saberspark's been real quiet. It's gonna get worse. Foreshadowing. So these comments were really odd. For one, why was KP, this innocuous person who makes like Kim Possible and Brony videos, dealing with a bunch of gross people? Like, what are you talking about? And also, what the hell does she mean that things are gonna get worse for Saberspark? What does that mean? Now, because I didn't have Twitter, I was not aware of the fact that she had been hyping up a multi-predator expose for months. All I was aware of was this totally not subtle foreshadowing in my comments. And admittedly, because I'm a nosy bitch who was also critical of Saber's defense of Gabe, I wanted to know what the fuck KP was talking about. Now, if you've seen Cartoon Cheese coverage, you would know that a lot of the voice actors were given little to no context to what they were lending their voices to. I was the exception to that rule for some reason, which makes me feel like a fucking asshole. To the voice actors who had lent a hand without context, I am so sorry that you were dragged into any of this without the much needed context that I was privy to. That makes me feel like I got like special treatment. I don't appreciate that at all. I would have liked if everyone was given the full extent of what they were signing off on, and not just me. Even though I was given like most of the context, more than most, I was randomly presented this context within the span of like 6 days, as I will present now. KP said that she would provide context to what I was reading if I asked. I did, and I got the whole spiel on like who Chris was, what DA Games was getting accused of, and that email that I was reading was what KP got in response to trying to make Chris's sexual misconduct known. And you know, at first, knowing what Chris had done and admitted to, I was on KP's side initially. I mean, I wouldn't be comfortable either if one of my former colleagues told a bunch of people that they jacked off on my clothes. Regardless of how you feel about KP, that's just objectively really gross. Even as a joke, it's just sexual harassment and weird. But considering, you know, all of this, I had to know, what did this have to do with Saberspark? And the answer was, he employed Chris. So here's what I thought this video was gonna be. Similar to my Black Griffin video, I thought this video expose would be about Chris and DA Games, and Saberspark would look like a hypocrite defending Chris, who has admitted to sexual misconduct. The most you could say about Saberspark is that the company he keeps makes him look like a hypocrite. And that's all really KP had. I advised her during our first conversation to address the criticism Saber had made about recording a Discord call without all participants acknowledging and consenting to record, as it was something that even I was critical of KP during our first conversation. I think I can see it from both perspectives. Like, I do not think that was something you should have done without clarifying, but at the same time, I would understand you'd want to have recorded evidence of Chris taking responsibility for his actions, so that if he tried to dodge accountability, you'd be able to show him admitting to everything said in the safety report. I can understand Saber getting upset over recording without consent, because that wasn't cool at all, and he probably wanted to white knight his friend, as he tends to do so very often. But at the same time, what Chris is apologizing for and admitting to is very gross and weird and uncomfortable. And so calling you a liar despite his own personal apology, it's like, Steven, read the room, my God. And in some ways, I still do kind of feel this way. In regards to Saberspark's response, he really just boils down KP's complaint against Chris and himself as,
"The joke was inappropriate, but it was told nearly 10 years ago. He profusely apologized to me as well and admitted to his faults. I believe in the inner growth of a person and that they can change for the better. He did good work for the team. I was surprised, though, that KP thought she had the ability to dictate who I hire and fire for my own team."
From what is alleged in the DA Games allegations, aficionados Chris not only engaged in racist memes in the DA Games server back in 2016, which is a year after his sexual misconduct, but Will also shared not safe for work lolicon images in Chris's server in 2018, 3 years after the fact. From KP's perspective, this apology doesn't really mean much of anything if Chris's behavior actually got worse, even borderline criminal in the 3 years since. It doesn't make this interaction any better given what Chris and Will were actually doing. I'll give this to Saberspark. I too also believe in the growth of a person. And these things did happen well over 10 years ago. It's very possible that the person Chris is today is not the same person that he was a decade ago. But personally, if I'm gonna make this stance on lolicon...
For those who are not familiar with the term, let's just say it's Leading up to this point, Ange had gone through a number of mental and physical health issues as a result of trauma from childhood sexual assault, among more recent issues. They stated that, per the recommendation of their therapist, if true, one outlet for venting their pent-up emotions was drawing shota art. Now, I really don't want to have to describe this term, but okay, fine, I have to. Shota art refers to adult material featuring cartoon characters, specifically young boy characters. One of the pairings they would draw Rule 34 of was Frankie Foster and Mac from Foster's Home, or Zim and Dib from Invader Zim. Now, I don't really think this is the best approach for dealing with that kind of trauma personally, but hey, that's just me. And I also again have my suspicions if the therapist approved this.
And my editor and his other boss are sharing lolicon back and forth, and said editor also made a sex joke about someone who I once considered one of my friends. I'd probably tell that guy to choke on a brick. By the end of the day, it's not up to KP or anyone in the court of public opinion to tell Saberspark who he can and can't hire. If he wants to stand by Chris, he is 100% in his right to do so. All I can do is just criticize it and call him a hypocrite. Which, being a hypocrite isn't the worst thing in the world. Everyone has been a hypocrite at some point. Unless you're part of, the drama sphere on the internet, in which case being a hypocrite is, worse than murder or something. But making Steven look like a hypocrite wasn't enough for KP. She wanted to kneecap Saberspark. On the 26th of April, at 1 in the morning, KP randomly messages me saying, quote, "Hey, I don't know if you're around, but fuck it. I can tell you what's going on in more detail because I think the more people talking about it when it breaks, the better." KP proceeds to tell me of a rape allegation against Saberspark, which I was shocked to hear about since I was already privy to this claim in my comment section of my Black Griffin video. Someone had commented something along the lines of, "By the way, Saberspark's a rapist," and I deleted that comment because I thought that person was talking out of their ass. Apparently, this allegation was made early, posted a week before KP had planned on it coming out. She had even written a tweet forward that was supposed to come out alongside the allegations. The forward presented the allegations in a completely new light than what was eventually put out by Bonk when he refused to use what KP wrote. The following is a testimony of rape by coerced consent between Saberspark and the victim in said testimony. There were 2 isolated incidents, 2012 and 2013. This isn't true, by the way. Both of the incidents were in 2012. We, Bonk, as well as YouTuber ILoveKimPossibleALot, have talked to the victim extensively and believe the validity of these claims. There's something that should be noted about this forward. KP had written this herself for Bonk to post alongside the allegations, as if she wrote it from the perspective of Bonk himself. Like, pretending to be him drafting out the tweet to post online on his account as if he wrote it. But also, the allegation here is different than what Bonk puts out on his own front. KP calls the allegation rape by coercion, which is interesting for two reasons. Later, it will be shown how KP and Courtney Pete do not believe in the concept of implied consent. But if they believe that the accusation initially was rape by coercion, then that must mean that KP and co. acknowledged that Emily had to have given an indication that the sexual encounter was actually consensual. However, because Emily claims that the encounter made her highly uncomfortable, it's almost like they had to concoct like some sort of way for this to be rape in some fashion. So they went with the narrative of coercion, so it made sense why the victim would agree to have sex at all, but still felt it was wrong. It also shows that those presenting the allegations backing it up, like KP, Bonk, Courtney Pete, Amy New, whoever the fuck else, they all don't appear to be on the same page, as Bonk didn't go forward with this tweet draft. We will see more of this miscommunication and leopards eating faces later on. So what is KP's angle in telling me all of this? Bonk being a jumping off point, and even like bringing this allegation to the public at all? Well, at the time, KP claims that the goal of the allegations was supposed to go up right before the video to blindside him. So, let me get this straight. You wanted Bonk to release these allegations on your own terms, along with your video, with your words for the forward of the tweet, and told me, in hopes that more people would talk about these allegations when they drop, all to blindside Saberspark. First of all, that's insane. Objectively, this is just an insane thought process that rape allegations are for the purpose of blindsiding someone you already expressed to me in these DMs you do not like. And can we just talk about how manufactured this plan was? To get Bonk to say certain things, to how KP would instruct the victim on how they should make their statement. KP and Courtney coached Emily to remove any mentions of implied consent, adding the details of Sabers and her height and weight difference. KP, this is your edit. This is your recommendation. What was highlighted in yellow are recommended specifications, whilst the pink highlights are direct additions or rewordings by KP and co. Saberspark was also significantly larger than me, as I was an 80-something pound 18-year-old girl, so I physically could not stop him. This ended up in the final statement the victim approved of being released to the public, and it was something that she added to her statement via Discord DMs between herself and KP after KP suggested adding it in. This is really damning in and of itself, but it gets even worse when the video actually comes out. Not only is this allegation featured an hour and 30 minutes into a 2-hour video, but the discussion of the allegation itself is held by Courtney Pete and KP, once again debunking the concept of implied consent.
Consensual sexual encounter is never something you're going to question afterwards, okay? Like, you just don't question a consensual encounter. Sure, you may have a consensual encounter that's unsatisfying. You may have one that you regret, you may look back on one and go, if I could make that decision again, I probably wouldn't. But people don't question consensual sexual experiences with, did I just get violated? To be quite honest. And like, the other thing that kind of breaks my heart is there's one point in her testimony where she questions, if I'm remembering this correctly, that like maybe she was at fault because she had a crush on him, like maybe she gave the wrong signal or something. Maybe she implied something, or he thought consent was implied because he knew there was a crush on her. Like, in all honesty, consent is never implied. Like, even secure, confident individuals in a sexual encounter will check in with their partner as things escalate and change gears, and they'll say things like, are you okay? Should we keep going? Is this good? Like, Because consent is not something that is implied. It's never something that's implied. You know, an absence of a no is not a yes in any regard. An absence of resistance is not compliance. And even in that regard, compliance is not an invitation.
Now, I'm not super well educated on implied consent to give like my opinion on it. I know that it's like sort of a contentious topic. There's arguments for it and against it. What I can say about like this whole implied consent thing is how it's argued in this exact video. Whilst there's a whole 15-minute segment talking about how implied consent is bullshit, KP does address recording Chris without his consent, like I said she should, using implied consent as her defense.
Chris isn't the victim. I can't believe I have to even have this segment, but with the implication of Steven's, what are you going to do, record me comment on top of Chris's statement talking about the recording being without his knowledge? Let's just clear this up. So firstly, as already stated, I thought it was obvious that a call-up was being recorded for safety reasons, because it's about sexual harassment. It's not like a fun call. Like, I thought it was obvious. Obviously it wasn't.
I hope KP knows that consent doesn't just apply to sex. It applies to just about everything you agree to do. Signing implied consent forms for medical procedures, contract law that includes explicit signed consent, giving a yes or no to things you do or do not want to do is giving someone consent. And if you truly believe implied consent is bullshit, then you can't also use that defense to record people without their permission. And that is just one of the many problems I have with this video. Unfortunately, we can't have a conversation about Saberspark and Emily Jones without talking about this video. I think the allegations themselves should be evaluated and given a fair shake on their own without the association to this horrible video, because dismissing them based on their inherent source is an argumentative fallacy called a genetic fallacy. However, since I'm featured in it, briefly, I must absolutely disavow this video and just break down why this doesn't work. Use this as an educational opportunity of what not to do.
Hello viewers, welcome to another segment of Maybe the Internet Was a Big Fucking Mistake.
One of the many complaints of this video is in its tone. Many citing it to be completely tone deaf when paired with allegations of rape and sexual abuse.
But I like to think of myself like the Jon Stewart of the YouTube animation community. I call things out when I feel like I can add something to the conversation.
I don't want to be alive anymore.
Like, you just draw this for your boss, right? If memory serves, there's also a nude version.
That's disgusting.
I think you guys are just trying to wait until this all dies down and everyone forgets, and then Chris will just magically appear.
Now, given how I use humor in my own coverage on darker topics of this nature, I cannot say shit. I guess this is one of those things where I kind of have to just ask the audience, what do you guys think? This complaints in like jokes and tone wasn't an issue with my own content until KP's video came out. I've been presenting stories of sexual misconduct on this channel for 5 years, with the same amount of hyperbole, memes, and even costuming to the complaint of absolutely no one until KP's video came out. So, because I would actually like to hear constructive criticism, unlike Courtney Pete, I would like to know, am I part of the problem? Am I just as bad? Am I also in the wrong when I joke around and try to be entertaining in light of serious topics? Is there really a difference or not? Because the only conclusion I can come up with is KP is the reason I can't be funny anymore. Most of my presentation is in trying to come across as precise and to the point, whilst also making lighthearted jabs to cope with the uncomfortableness of the situation. Like, if you've watched any of my videos, I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but like, I have a horrible nervous laugh. It's like a trigger to anything that makes me feel like uncomfortable, or when I'm masking the fact that I'm extremely socially awkward and everyone can tell, and I think laughing can just fix it, and it doesn't. But for me, it's just like a train wreck I can't look away from, and I cope with it by giggling and just being like, oh, dude, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And so like, Maybe KP is the same way, but her excuse for her video's tone is the fact that she has, apparently, never covered situations like this before on her channel. This is a lie. This is an objective lie. The Lily Orchard video she made was over a year ago, and Lily has done way worse things. And what's interesting with the Lily Orchard video was that the editing and the presentation style is virtually the same as the DA Games and Saberspark video, albeit the former is way more over the top. It's like a dial being turned way the fuck up in like a span of a year.
Bestiality porn commissioned by minors, flashing your tits on YouTube, which is against YouTube terms of service, incest shipping, pretending in bullshit, and the list goes on and on and on and on.
I've chosen not to keep this person anonymous because I believe this is not a mistake or a slip of the tongue. This is an active attempt of slander and misogyny, and that's just not acceptable.
So I guess I can understand why she thought the tone was fine, given that, like, this is just how all of her videos are presented, and if it wasn't a problem, then why would she believe it's an issue with this coverage? Well, the issue is that this video should have never been presented in the first place, especially paired with the Saberspark allegations, given she had only learnt of these allegations by March. Reminder, this video came out in May, and she had been working on it for half a year. What we know now is that the allegations were passed down from Amy New to Bonk to KP. Amy New is friends with Emily Jones, who backed up the allegation on Twitter and Blue Sky. I have personally been friends with the victim for over 10 plus years. I was at Canterlot Gardens and witnessed them both together. If my words mean anything, I believe them. I have nothing to gain from this. I just want my friend to be believed. That's interesting, Amy, because when asked directly, when was the first time you heard of the allegations, you said it was March 25th of this year. So, which is it? Did you witness them together 10 years ago, or were you only aware of this situation by March? Then, Bonk was given the story, but was busy with other things, and since he was already in KP's Discord server, he thought it would just be better to hand it off to her, as she was already in the process of making a video on Saberspark anyways, so it all was just really convenient. After the video was posted and then removed, the first of my many calls throughout this began with, first, speaking to KP directly about what happened on May 3rd, with Phineas in this call. Enter gave me a list of questions to ask since he was already curious about the situation, and one of the questions was, how long exactly was this video in production? I took notes, and I summed up everything that was said during the call, and the answer KP gave was, discussion on Gabe, Saber, and Chris has been around for well over a year. This is in regards to, like, talks in her Discord server. However, the discussion to actually make a video on DA Games was in September 2024. In March of 2025, Bonk got KP in contact with Saber's victim. The video was premiered May 1st, 2025. She also confirmed that the focus with her video was DA Games initially, and Saber would be added as another example of him defending shady people, similar to the Black Griffin story. However, when she got this information by March, she decided her new strategy for the video was to add the allegation as a way to blindside Saberspark so that he had no time to reply to the allegations. One of the other contentions brought up against this video is how obvious it was that it was supposed to be a DA Games video, and the Saberspark allegations were just shoehorned in at the very end. I think KP did have every intention to talk about Saberspark in this video, irregardless if these allegations were there or not. And the reason I believe this is because KP's video centers around and has seemingly been always about one person. Aficionado's Chris.
Chris was a team member roughly from 2014 to 2015. Chris was generally a nice guy in my time knowing him.
Chris.
And for the record, I assumed Chris knew he was being recorded because it was a call about safety. It only gets worse from here.
It's what she presents at the very start of this video. It's what she presented to me when I asked for context on what I was reading and what the video was about. It's not that the video was about DA Games or Saberspark. It was about Chris. It's always been about Chris. Saberspark and DA Games were related by employment, and KP is also related to Chris via past collaborations. The difference being, KP cut Chris out of her life for what I think are fair enough reasons, and Saberspark and DA Games didn't. And that really can be what this all attributes to. KP made this video purely because she was angry that Chris was still getting work even after what he did to her. And I mean, given Saberspark's response video, if you just base her intent on that, you could just see that as the main reason, but I still think it goes a little deeper than that, which I will present throughout this section. This was something that Mr. Enter brings up in his video, so I'm just gonna copy paste what his point was, but all of the random ass memes and skits and jokes wouldn't even be a problem if this video had proper flow. Like, please explain to me what Jerry Seinfeld dating a 17-year-old and Trump's grab her by the pussy tape and Lily Orchard being tacked on at the very end. What the fuck does that have anything to do with anything?
The 2016 leak of the Hollywood Access tape was a big deal. In a bus, we have an orange man who shall not be named. Orange man was talking about women in an inappropriate way. Google it if you want to. This whole script is giving me a fucking headache. I guess you can be Jerry Seinfeld, who dated a 17-year-old when he was 38.
So, what are you gonna do later?
I got a date with Nikki.
Oh, yeah, she's a beauty.
And she's also 17.
Bold and beautiful.
Part 6. Shitting on Lily Orchard because it's fun.
To understand just how bad the flow was in this video, in the process of all of this, I watched this video twice. Once after it was privated and re-uploaded, and again to take notes, as I do with a lot of my research. And even with my notes, I still have no idea what the allegations against Will Ryan are. Something about dating a minor when he was in his early 20s or something. I have no fucking idea. I don't even know who these people are. I think they're related to the DA Games stuff, but I don't know what the fuck this interview is about. I'm sure it's important, and I am so sorry if I'm being dismissive, but I genuinely don't know who the fuck this is. These interviews are just, they're so bad. And this is coming from someone who is really, really bad at interviews. Clearly, there's also the issue with content theft, as a portion of this video is dedicated to a Snapcube meme of Eggman pissing on the moon.
I've come to make an announcement! Shadow the Hedgehog is a bitch-ass motherfucker!
Which, in hindsight, given we know who the victim is now, a Sonic meme, more specifically an Eggman meme, that is being used as the audio for the man that is alleged to have sexually assaulted Emmy Jones, who is a Sonic content creator, who has worked with the voice of Eggman directly, oh my god. And you knew it was her the whole fucking time too. What the fuck?
Whatever.
When did you know?
When did I know it was Emmy?
Yes.
At the beginning.
Right, okay.
And weirder even, the audio is a fan dub of a fan dub. And the cosplayer who was behind this audio wasn't even alerted that his read of this meme was used in this at all. He was never asked for permission or knew what his cosplay video was being perverted into. So on top of making a rape allegation with victim testimony and literally nothing else, KP is a thief on top of that. The one thing about this video I cannot seem to figure out is who exactly saw this video before it was released. Now, in retrospect, this isn't really indicative of anything important, because even if KP had let people see this video beforehand for the sake of constructive criticism, she's already shown me that she was never gonna take any advice from anyone, even when it's coming directly from Lyle Convoy, telling her not to include the Saberspark allegations until a police report is filed.
Then that needs to be handled by the cops. Period. 100% period. That needs a police report filed today. Here's the problem, though, with that inherently. If that did happen, and Saber did do that, he will by nature know who it is. So if it gets out in any way, shape, or form, and a police report hasn't been filed, she's going to be at risk. Like, that's just the truth of the matter in this. And it's unpleasant, it's ugly, but that's the truth.
KP went ahead and did it anyways. So who saw this video beforehand only is really like a curiosity thing at this point of like who signed off on this and who thought it was a good idea. So this is a question that was asked in the first call with Enter's questionnaire, and this was the answer that I got. 2 people looked over the script. KP and one of her Discord mods who was also a CSA survivor. Given that this mod had been a fan of KP watching their content for a bit, the tone of the script and its structure wasn't something they were unfamiliar with. How KP presented the video is similar to how her other videos are like. Plus, the biases there being a mod and a fan. Who saw the video is dependent on who actually reviewed it or not. Lyle Convoy and Courtney Pete were sent the video ahead of its live premiere, neither of which watched it beforehand or gave feedback. Which is weird because Courtney was in the video she apparently never watched beforehand. Saber's victim watched it beforehand and had no issues with the video. A couple of victims of DA Game staff also saw it and gave some notes. There was a point 24 hours before the video was supposed to go live where the victim that viewed the video requested a change that they were able to adhere to. But that was pretty much it. When asking Emily directly on her burner account, she does claim to have at least seen part of the video beforehand. She says, quote, KP sent me the bits related to consent and stuff. I don't want to cause any issues. During a large portion of this, I had a kidney injury and was hospitalized like every other day, needing fluids because I do have an eating disorder. KP tried getting me into a call to show me the entire video for days, but I was so overwhelmed with the frequent hospital trips that I struggled getting back to her. Eventually, I joined a call and was primarily muted and not paying attention until I got to what I felt was the most important bits, which was my own parts. So I didn't really see the other bits all too much. Respectfully, I just didn't have the mental capacity for everything else. When we reference the chats between Emily Jones on her main Discord account and KP, there does appear to be an interaction where KP sends her a Google Drive link, and Emily replies, "That video made me cry. No joke. Thank you." Now, could it be possible that like the Google Drive link was just her segment of the video like she claims? Sure, it could be. But there's also the fact that KP wanted to show Emily the video full on call for days. Eventually, I joined a call and was primarily muted and not paying much attention until I got to what I felt was the most important bit, which was my own parts. So I really didn't see the other bits all too much. This isn't a straight answer of whether or not Emily saw the whole video or not. KP claims that she did. Emily claims she only saw a portion. The chats don't confirm one way or another. What I can say for absolute certainty is that Lio did not watch the video beforehand and was only sent a first draft and not the final product. Bonk didn't see it either, giving feedback as he watched it live. Many of the voice actors, including myself, never saw it beforehand. Hell, I wasn't even alerted to the video's live premiere until it was already privatized and removed. I didn't even know this video went up. And for whatever odd reason, despite having a dedicated section, Courtney didn't watch the video either. And yet, Courtney had the audacity to tell a CSA survivor giving constructive criticism in the video's live premiere chat that they were only here to complain and to just don't watch if you know like. Courtney Pete especially has been pissing me the fuck off because her and KP tried dragging me into like the Cy and Anthony spat that they were all in because Anthony and her both liked my Black Griffin video. No, I am not kidding. Courtney is that petty and petulant. This girl thinks that she is some sort of ultra-creptidarian of how all sexual assault survivors are supposed to act and feel, all because her sister is one of the most well-known sex pests to ever exist online. Either way, her breaking down after the Cope and Seethe video is very funny. Oh, and this. Within those first few days, in witnessing the fallout of this hit piece, my thought process at the time came to 2 conclusions. If this victim is lying about this, KP tried to ruin Saberspark's career and hype up his downfall all on the basis of a lie. A lie in which she trusted and wholeheartedly believed, sure, but could have been easily debunked through having any conversation with Saberspark or listening to Casey Fish, KP and Saberspark's shared mutual friend, who told KP not to go through with this. Plus, KP never bothered to do any background check on the accuser until after this video had already made a splash online, something she absolutely could have done way before. Finding out who Emmy Jones is and her past controversies could have maybe made KP reconsider. But no, she didn't do any of this and was so eager to get this content out there to blindside Saberspark, which gives an unfair chance to both parties, both Saberspark and Emmy Jones, to present their case online. If this victim is telling the truth, and her experiences with Saberspark was what she alleges it was, KP does a massive disservice to them by having their allegations tied to this horrible video, and their allegations just being like a footnote in comparison to everything else. It takes what once was her story and utilizes it as a weapon armed by KP to go on her little revenge tour. Like, either way, regardless of the validity of this allegation, KP is cooked. Her motivations are not out of genuine concern and care for Emily. They're about getting even. In addition to the weight and height difference addition, KP also adds this little bit. I was not made aware of his jokes about consent and his recent behavior involving Chris until only recently, and it left my stomach in knots. KP wanted Emily's statement to include talking about Chris, despite that really having nothing to do with Emily Jones at all. It's almost like KP wanted aficionados Chris and Saberspark to be the reason why Emily came forward. Emily even cites Saber's fight with KP on Twitter as an example of Steven utilizing his fan base and his influence to go after people, and why she was so afraid to go public with her allegation. Now, it's already been explained by Enter how this isn't really a good example and would almost be impossible for Emily to see, given that she didn't follow KP or Saberspark, but I can only assume that she said this because KP probably mentioned her fallout with Saberspark and showed her these tweets. And it's not like this interaction was all that long ago. It was November 15th, 2024. Early into the video's production, KP really wanted Chris to be the straw that broke Emily's back, that finally encouraged her to come forward about Saberspark. That somehow their public fighting made her go, I can't deal with this anymore. I need to say something. I need to get a hold of KP and tell her my story. When that's not true. I know it's not true because Emily told me straight up the reason she came forward was because of everything surrounding Black Griffin. She even cited my video as the thing that triggered her so much and pushed her over the edge. And when speaking to Amy New, the first person that she recommended was not KP, because spoiler alerts, Amy New and KP fucking hate each other, but it was Bonk, the guy spearheading the Black Griffin story, because the Black Griffin story was what made her want to come forward in the first place. So she goes to the guy who's talking about the Black Griffin story the most. At best, KP was drastically overconfident, way in over her head, and was so convinced what she was doing was right that she went against what her colleagues were telling her, and even was willing to burn down a bridge with her old friend Casey because she really thought that Emily needed her activism and support more than anything else. At worst, she was so angry about the Chris thing that when she found out about Emily's accusation, she used that as the nail in Saber's coffin, finally having another excuse besides an employment quarrel to go on this crusade to take Saber down. And I should reiterate, this was a crusade. It's one that Bonk was also just as determined to succeed in. And he makes very clear his intentions in the DMs between himself and KP. Hopefully with the newest of Griffin's victims sharing their story, her story paired with yours further cements Saber's fall from fame. These frat bros from Bronies React were all far worse than I could have ever imagined, and need not to have an audience. And you know what the fucked up part about all of this is? Without Emily's allegation, KP does, at least, have a reasonable complaint against Saberspark. They were once friends in the Bronisphere, close enough that Saber even came to her home and met her family. This was while KP was still in college. In 2015, during Everfree Northwest, KP and aficionados Chris attend and share a hotel room together, alongside with 2 other people. Chris circulates this story that, at this convention, he masturbated in the shared bathroom of this hotel room. He finishes all over the bathroom, he has a bout of lightheadedness, and then he lands in KP's dirty laundry. This is sexual harassment. Point blank, period. And it's a story KP wouldn't hear about until years after the fact, despite considering Chris to be one of her friends. In the years since, Saber has hired Chris, along with DA Games, as an editor/team member. This becomes a conflict of interest for KP, as her once old friend gave a job to her sexual harasser. The guy who sexually harassed her is now working with one of the biggest influences in the content space. Not to mention, at the same time that she's learning about this story, the DA Games document drops where Chris is alleged to have shared lolicon with Will. When confronted about this information, Saber gets in a heated argument on Twitter with KP, calling her a liar who records people without consent, even going as far as to say that KP and Chris ended things on friendly terms. KP doesn't have the right to complain about who he hires personally, especially over bullshit that happened a decade ago. I hope Saberspark understands that 1, forgiveness can be revoked, and 2, given that Chris is alleged in the DA Games document to have also been sharing lolicon with his boss Will, I don't necessarily blame KP for revoking whatever forgiveness she gave in this call. Which, by the way, that forgiveness sounds like this.
All right. So I don't really have anything else that I feel comfortable saying at this point, but I'll just leave with good luck and may God have mercy on your soul. And this too shall pass. Okay? All those things together. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a good night. And I think I'm going to limit my communication with you for obvious reasons, but
that's perfectly reasonable, and I understand.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, I appreciate you talking to me. Okay.
I appreciate the same. You be in good health.
Yeah. I'm fine. I'm much healthier, but it took a very long time for me to get here. Lots of very deep trauma therapy.
And I'm very sorry you had to go through that. I know what it's like.
I appreciate it, but it's not something I started talking about till relatively recently, but it really fucked up my relationship with my family, or at least complicated it. And it's been harder than I've let on publicly. So I appreciate you saying that.
So in her perspective, Chris doesn't appear to have made an effort to actually change 3 years after doing some creepy weirdo shit to her. And if KP's video was everything I just presented, if she had just been like, "Hi guys, this guy Chris used to volunteer to work on my videos. He used to be a friend until he told this story about jacking off and falling into my dirty laundry. He also shared lolicon with Will from DA Games. I used to be friends with Saberspark, but since he hired the guy that told a bunch of people that he did this to me, and who also liked lolicon, we're no longer friends. I think it's pretty shitty that he would employ and stand by a sex pest instead of stand by women." End of video, like and subscribe. I don't think a lot of people would disagree. Some people actually think this is still a valid criticism, like Jenny Nicholson. And it's like, yeah, I get it, especially given the lolicon stuff between him and Will. Standing by this guy, even still, I don't blame KP for getting triggered by this, especially since the DA Games document that's alleging all this stuff that Chris has done came out October of 2024, when the idea for this video was conceived. That's probably when KP revoked her original forgiveness, when she learned that Chris did these things that were just beyond sexual harassment of herself. I don't know. Maybe she has the right to start complaining again. And if this is truly her reasoning in revoking that forgiveness, I get it. But we aren't in that hypothetical reality I just made up. We are here, in this one, where everything sucks ass. For having any involvement in this video at all, I'm really, really sorry. I thought it was going to be harmless. I was doing it at the behest of a friend of a friend. Although my part was minor, as in just one line read, it was still dangerous, irresponsible, and reckless of KP to release that video at all. And I feel guilty by proxy of that video. I should have absolutely asked more questions, done something more when KP dropped this allegation on me out of nowhere, and should have seen red flags in the lack of communication upon the release of this video. And for all of that, I'm deeply sorry. I should have never even entertained it. But KP's video is not where this ends. Far from it. If you've seen Enter's video, it pretty much goes over the aftermath of everything, but I'll go through it really, really fast.
There's one thing that's of a fairly universal opinion. We should be focusing on the actual allegations and not the video that was, for all intents and purposes, a complete and utter train wreck.
May 5th is when we were able to get in contact with Emily via her alt Discord account, Sunspecs. I wanted to get in contact with her to tell her how sorry I was for being a part of KP's video, and I would stand by and believe her should her accusation against Steven be accurate. Plus, after the release of KP's video, many people speculated that because Emily was anonymous, that she didn't actually exist, and that this victim was just a manifestation of KP and Bonk. So being able to talk to Emily was important to verify that this is a real victim that does in fact exist and is making an actual allegation. And it wasn't just something that KP pulled out of her ass. That's when we started asking verifying questions. Enter was invited to the group chat later that same day, and Emily presented us with con footage from Canterlot Gardens 2012 and EQLA 2012, dates and times to set a timeline, proof of purchase of tickets for those cons, and her full story of the two events. She also provided old messages from her friends of her opening up about being sexually assaulted by Saber all the way back in 2018. She even mentions in a notes app / suicide vent note in 2023 that she was sexually assaulted by Saberspark. And if Jessa is to be believed, even as far back as 2013, Emily was telling them that Saber raped her. More specifically, it was in their shared hotel room at Cutie Mark Con from May 31st to June 2nd. Throughout the course of our conversation, there were two things that we could most definitely prove. We can prove that Saber and Emily were in attendance at these conventions through both footage and on their Twitter timelines at the time. There was no doubt that they ran in the same circles, as Casey Fish and AC Racebest were both in her Skype contacts. And these are some of Saber's oldest friends. Emily appears briefly in convention footage alongside the Everfree Radio group, and once dated Brony Animator, Soulrack, or Yap Lab from 2012 to 2016. There's no doubt that Emily and Saber knew each other through their shared friend group, but that's all we really could prove. The story was still just a he said, she said. The problem we faced is if her story remained consistent. There were two things that made us originally doubt her: her online history and discrepancies in her story. So let's start with how we found out who Sunspecs actually was. Emily was very hesitant to directly tell us who she was, but it was very hard to figure out whether any of this con footage that she was giving us was even relevant if she wasn't upfront with who she is. So she did agree to tell us her first name. When giving us her own con footage as evidence, she sent an old vlog clip via Dropbox, which gave us her full legal name. From there, Phineas and Enter did a background check and found that she was actually a YouTuber herself, with a long history spanning even longer than Mr. Enter. Around the time that we figured this out, Reddit figured it out, and KP was also figuring things out as well, through a video documentary by Lance Jerkov called The Queen Falls, Emmy Jones or Emily Jones Exposed, which KP posted in Lyle Convoy's cat server. This resulted in a call between myself, KP, and Enter. When Enter and I discussed the true identity of Sunspecs, KP claimed to have not watched Lance's video. She just posted it in cat server without watching it. But the perception she got was that the video was a bunch of petty bullshit. So I watched the video, and I took notes and presented what was being levied against Emmy Jones. And the picture that Lance paints is very, very bad of Emily's character. I'm talking sex scandals, cheating allegations, Dr. Phil, claiming someone didn't have brain cancer, not paying Mike Pollock, weaponizing her audience in targeted harassment campaigns, some dude claiming that Emily wanted his babies and lied about her age just to sleep with him when she was a minor and he was a grown-ass adult, and even covering up a sexual assault, and so much more. Needless to say, This did not present a good character of Emily Jones. And if she was already riddled in this much controversy, these many sex scandals, where she comes out of it looking like a manipulator, a whore, and a crazy person, why would Saberspark be any different? Now let's talk about the discrepancies in her testimonies that drove me up the fucking wall. As much as I wanted to believe this girl, this was the one thing that made me really question if I was dealing with a liar or not. The cell phone discrepancy. Emily claims to have been texted by Saberspark at 10 p.m. to meet up in the hotel lobby, but his phone was apparently dead according to the con footage.
Your phone died? Why would it do that?
Plugged it in last night. I went through the entirety of the EQLA footage, all 2 to 3 hours of this mega compilation. I made notes of every notable moment I thought was relevant, compared to what was posted to Twitter between both Saber and Emily. This process took 2 days. The only thing that exonerated Emily was the fact that the time zone wasn't accounted for, which placed this tweet by Saber at 9:59 p.m. California time, when his cell phone is charged, and he posted this. So the 10 p.m. time that Emily gave us that she stuck to, even when I interrogated her about it and told her it didn't make any sense, was actually consistent when adjusted for California time. And even with Saber on the record, he says things that are consistent with Emily's story. Texting Emily to meet him at the lobby? Yeah, that was true. The fact that he had a sexual encounter with Emily at all? For sure, that does line up. But in retrospect, that's at least somewhat satisfactory, considering that, could you imagine, right, if Emily had made this allegation and Saber's rebuttal was like, I've never had sex with this person in my life? That'd be crazy, I think. There is one thing about Emily's testimony that doesn't add up, that I will even go so far as to say it was a straight up lie told straight to my face. But we'll talk about that when we get there. We need to talk about what KP did behind the scenes that made me blow up on her. Enter and I sat down with KP May 8th. Funny side note about that call, she was trying to get Lyle Convoy to jump in the call with us, despite the fact that both Enter and myself said that we didn't want him to be there. We talked about what was alleged against Emily, and how we found out who she actually was through the Dropbox. KP was pissed, and admittedly, this is where I might have fucked up a little bit. I was trying to validate KP's, anger and concern. She was upset that Emily might have lied to her, that she has a history that she didn't know about. And I told her that I, too, would also be very upset if I put my career at risk for someone that might have lied to me. What we agreed to do that night was that myself and KP would speak to Emily and tell her what we found out about her, and let her down easy on how, the Enter video was gonna have to go into a different direction. Because the thing is, Enter could not ignore the fact that, Reddit had already found out who they were. And she has all of these other controversies that he can't just pretend don't exist. So KP had a plan to talk to Emily. I told her I would assist in this call with her, just to set up the group chat and let's make this happen, Let's voice our concerns with this Emily Jones. Now, I didn't know this until the next day, but KP apparently was in contact with Emily's main Discord account the entire time. The whole time that I have been trying to talk to Emily via her burner account, which is not her immediate direct line of communication. She answers her main account more than her burner. So while I can't get an answer from the only contact line I have, KP had a direct line the entire time, which was so awesome. So because Emily was in and out of the hospital, she wasn't super responsive to either myself or KP, both on her main and on her burner account. So KP was getting really uneasy that Emily basically dipped the internet or something. So what she tried to do was get Lyle Convoy to have a confrontation with her on May 9th. Despite the fact that KP and I literally both agreed that we would do this together. Lyle sends her this. Hi, look, we know it's you, Emily. At this point, you can either come clean and talk to me and an associate of mine, or this is gonna spiral. Now, as threatening as this sounds, I actually have to defend Lyle here. So my buddy, That Creepy Reading, or TCR, as you all have already been well acquainted to on this channel, he's been friends with Lyle Convoy for a very long time. He spoke to him and confirmed that Lyle Convoy was not aware that KP was in contact with the Emu Emmy account. He only learned that KP knew the entire time during the Beckett interview. So when Beckett asked her this...
When did you know?
When did I know it was Emmy?
Yes.
At the beginning.
That apparently was the first time that Lyle had heard that information. So him doing this was out of the assumption that KP just discovered who she actually was, despite her knowing the entire time. And then KP later sends her this.
Okay, Emmy, I'll be honest. From my understanding, you shared a Dropbox file with Lazy, and your fucking name was on it. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that's direct confirmation. So I'm at the point where my reputation is on the line because of you. And I feel like an idiot because of you. And you can help me clean up this mess and get in a call and tell your side of the story, or this is going to blow up in your face. Because people have already figured out it's you based on that mistake. And I'm fucking tired, because the things that have been pointed out to me is that you have your own platform. You know, people, you knew going in that people were going to figure it out. Maybe not this quickly, maybe not by your own mistake, but they did. And you can be an adult and help me clean up this mess, or you can be a coward. I'm not yelling at you. I'm not telling you what to do. But you have put me, you've put people that are in the video in a very difficult and dangerous position. And I don't think you really understand that. And so I'm at the point where I talked to this guy Beckett, and he says that you have the chance right now to tell your side of the story in a call with me or with Lazy or with him or with someone, or people are going to villainize you. And that's where we're at. And none of like the things that have been pointed out to me doesn't make any sense. The timeline is questionable. The only people that vouched for you were Brony and Amy and Sophie, and Amy won't even fucking talk to me. So I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm being real with you. It's fucked. You're fucked one way or the other. So make a decision soon, or I will publicly confirm it was you. You have 24 hours.
So needless to say, this scared the shit out of Emily. Stupider, even, KP also sent the victim this, where she is literally shown coaching Lyle on what to say. Just like, okay, I understand. I'm just worried about her. Sorry if I sounded threatening before. That was just a guess. Give it a sec. Hey, I talked to the victim and she really doesn't want to talk to you. Is that okay? All right, I understand. I'm just worried about her. I'm sorry if I sounded threatening before. That was just a guess. So this is when I lost my collective shit. I screamed at KP on call and over text. And look, I must admit, my behavior on that call was not good. I'm not proud of that confrontation. I'm not somebody who likes to yell at people. Like, it takes a lot to get me to get that angry at somebody. And I don't like how I behaved on that call. I don't like how I behaved even within the text messages themselves. I know I probably could have handled myself better, and I absolutely should have, and I'm sorry. It's just, I was so frustrated. And at that point, I was just so over it. So I had to go ahead and do this confrontation all on my own because KP scared the shit out of this girl. And like I said, I'm not a confrontational person. This was just supposed to be like a sit-down talk with the three of us, discussing her reputation and how that has affected all of our working relationships going forward. And I somehow have to do that by myself. And just due to the stress of everything KP was doing behind the scenes, fucking this over for me, that call did not go well. It sort of did, kind of, I'll explain. That call was weird. I told her that her background check came up with all of this stuff, and we as a team have to go in a different direction because we can't just ignore this stuff. And it made it sound like we were just gonna toss her to the side and expose her or something, when that's not what I was trying to say at all. I was saying, you know, with the Reddit post and now everyone knowing who she was at that point, and all of these other controversies are being pointed to disprove her story. And we can't just pretend that that doesn't exist. We can't keep her anonymous anymore. Like, we have to talk about this. And we did. She sat down with me, and she went through each and every controversy and provided proof of her side of the story. All of which is now available on Enter's channel via a final interview where she goes over everything that's basically within the Lance video and like other rumors on Reddit and Kiwi Farms that we had to talk about. It's 3 hours long and it has all of her receipts in it. And after we talked, I apologized to Emily if the situation was presented in any way like I was trying to interrogate her or was being aggressive, because that's not what I was trying to do. I was just so stressed out with everything KP was doing that having to do this by myself, I just didn't conduct myself the way I wanted to. It made me feel like an asshole. It made me feel like an asshole. I was trying to be as gentle as I could, and I had tried to do this with others to support me because I'm not a confrontational person. It was, you know, at least a very productive conversation, which was good. I just wish I had handled things a lot better. However, this still seemed to have freaked Emily out. Despite the apologies and, you know, talking things out privately, like adults, she went to Bonk, which then proceeded to the Twitter thread where Bonk essentially throws me under the bus. Also, he threw KP under the bus right after her video was removed, so they're not on good terms anymore. Bonk claims that I'm some sort of drama YouTuber who threw allegations about Emily in her face. He also claims that this video that apparently I was making was going to paint Emily in a bad light. First of all, I was never making the video. Enter was. And Bonk knew that. He's been in contact with Mr. Enter since May 5th. And Enter tells him exactly how his video is going to be structured. What I'm planning on doing for the video is fully establishing the Saberspark stuff, the victim's allegation, and the end of the video will go into details about KP's mishandling of the situation. End/third act, something like that. The only reason I could assume that Bonk would assume that it was me making the video, to be candid, it's because he's fucking stupid. Bonk talks like he knows 100% of the story when he only really knows like half. He wasn't there. He doesn't know what was said or what Emily and I talked about. He's literally just making shit up. He also posted KP's threat to his social media, which Emily asked him not to do, and he just did it anyway. The same day after crashing the fuck out and getting all pissy that people were telling him to not rely on him and actually rely on good resources like rain, after much scrutiny, he tried throwing himself off a bridge, cursing my name and everyone calling him out. I know a lot of people were genuinely concerned with Bonk's behavior and his ideation. I have no doubt that he is suicidal. He has said as such. This was a scary time for everyone. And I want to say this, regardless of how Bonk has treated me, I don't wish him harm to himself, and I don't wish him death, and I don't wish him, like, any ill will. I just think he fails to understand why the internet is being so hostile towards him. But we can discuss that in the final part. So, since we cleared all of that up, we were still pondering on, like, what the hell are we gonna do? Even with Emily's past controversies, even if she took the L on any of them, is that really enough to say that she couldn't have been a victim? I don't think so. And it's not like Enter and I could actually prove, like, that she was being deceptive. We couldn't prove that her timeline was wrong because there's footage and there's even tweets to back it up. We thought we proved her timeline wrong with the phone discrepancy thing, but then it turned out, oh, we just didn't adjust the time zone. It was correct. I admit her credibility due to all these allegations isn't good, but does that mean she's necessarily lying about this specific thing? I don't know. I can't prove that she's lying. I tried to, and she turned out being right anyway. The most Enter's video could do at this point is build a timeline, so we can prove that she's a real person that exists and was friends with Steven. But that was pretty much it. We would never know for certain, and since it was an incident over a decade ago and no one else was in the room where it happened, the most we could do is give everyone all the information that we were able to find out and have people come to their own conclusions. We couldn't say outright one way or another if Emily was telling the truth, but we can give people beyond just the one testimony and the timeline of events that led to the victim making her claims. We can basically build like a much broader picture than KP had built, so that people at least had more to work with and more to actually come to a relatively educated conclusion on what they thought about this whole thing. Now, I'm sure you're probably wondering why we didn't speak to Saberspark himself, and to answer this question, we need to talk about Beckett.
Lazy, do you want to come on and be a purity test and be a palate cleanser? I haven't spoken to Lazy Bedhead in like a couple of days. We can be bees, Lazy. Hey, Lazy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. What the hell have you been doing?
Oh,
I
fuck
just
me.
jumped in and you're having an argument?
So I admit, there was a hesitancy to speak to Cope and Seethe. He wanted to get a hold of me at some point, but I was just so wrapped up with talking to KP, talking to Mr. Enter, talking to Enter's team, everyone on there. I didn't want to squeeze another name in the pile of social interactions that I would have to endure. Plus, Beckett can attest to this because we literally joked about this, but he and I get characterized and grouped into different sides of the YouTube commentary spectrum. I usually get categorized in the more sympathetic side to commentary and believing in victims and hearing people out. Meanwhile, Beckett gets categorized on the commentary brosphere and rape review.
Ultimate rape review.
So obviously there's some tension there. But what I would describe Beckett more so is a mix of commentary bro and art CC. He stands out like a sore thumb because he's not a ride or die for these people. If they're being dicks, he's gonna call that shit out. It doesn't matter if they're acquaintances or even close friends or not. If they're being stupid, Beckett talks about how they're being stupid. You can see that in the ways that he talks about Lyle Convoy. Sure, he comes to Lyle's defense a lot these days, but their whole friendship started out with him being very critical of Lyle Convoy, and he's still critical of Lyle and stuff that he's doing on Twitter to this very day, despite the fact that they're friendly with each other. But aside from, breaking that barrier, there was one other thing that made me hesitant about speaking to Beckett. Emily's partner, Cameron, who I've also spoken to once or twice during the duration of everything, he made the claim that during Bonk's attempt on live stream, Beckett was in the live chat telling him to jump. I did ask Beckett directly about this, and it's not true. He didn't do this. In fact, when I asked him about this, he was actually pretty offended. He wasn't mad at me, he was just really confused. Based on our conversations, it just doesn't seem like he would joke about that kind of stuff. Maybe he said something along the lines of, oh, I would kill myself, or I want to kill myself. That's an ongoing joke in his community, but I do the same shit too. We're just joking about committing self-end on ourselves, not wishing that on other people. Regardless, before speaking to Beckett, I had a poor perception of his character that made me think, oh, why should I talk to this guy? He's just some contrarian asshole who doesn't care about victims and just wants to troll and be a drama farmer. Who cares? But after actually sitting down with Beckett and talking to him for 7 hours in our first conversation we've ever had, and even beyond that, over the course of I don't know what I want to think, 2 weeks or something like that, we have come to an understanding of each other. Even beyond us both working on the same story, we would just kind of shoot the shit about other things, and I would walk away from our calls feeling better, feeling less anxious and worried. And I know we already talked about this. His video on me, it is what it is. It's harsh, it's not very nice, but it was humbling. It was necessary. Hell, I mean, like, in retrospect, if you actually watch it, it doesn't even talk about me that much. The point is, I'm very critical of other people on this channel. If I can't handle it, I shouldn't be dishing it out. It's just that simple. I have to accept when I get criticism, and I can't get pissy because I criticize people all the time. And besides, Beckett may have been critical of my work, but before reducing his section on me, he had Anthony defend my video in an interview that got cut when we ended up talking things out.
Now originally, this section was much longer and way more pissed off. I actually included Anthony Grimolia giving a defense of Lazy Bedhead just to provide some kind of balance, but I have since spoken to her at length both about the Saberspark allegations and the wider story involving Black Griffin, and as much of this section was directed pointedly towards her, that feels a little bit redundant at this point.
Why would he even listen to anyone who thought my video was good if he thought that I was malicious and awful? The bottom line is, despite what many would suspect, like, Beckett and I don't hate each other. Hell, he was defending me in the live chat of his premiere video, The Shaming of Saberspark. He wanted to know if I had received any harassment because of that video so that he could shoot it down. Does that sound like someone who hates me or doesn't want me represented fairly? Does that sound like this heartless troll who laughs when people are suicidal and just wants the worst for everybody? I don't think so. Now, there are some things that Beckett does I don't particularly agree with. He does pick on Bonk. A lot. Relentlessly. But to be fair, Bonk claps back at him by calling him an alt-right loser. And all I can say to that is, all's fair in love and war. I know Beckett doesn't need me to help him. He doesn't need me to defend his honor, but I'm going to because I think this is stupid. Bonk genuinely believes that Beckett's YouTube name, Cope and Seethe, is an alt-right dog whistle. No, I'm not kidding. Now, could some right-wing jackass say Cope and Seethe and, you know, Cope and Seethe lived hard on the internet? Yeah, sure. But dude, it's just internet slang. Everybody has said Cope and Seethe before. Like, it's like the new deal with it or something. Plus, I don't know if y'all know this or not, but Cope and Seethe is owned by two people. The other person, Jenny, is a trans woman. Now, I know how this works. I know Blair White exists. I know that's not indicative of anything. Jenny has even said some things I don't necessarily agree with, but to be fair, we all have to have our anti-SJW phase at some point. I would know. I'm just saying that I doubt Beckett would share his login information with a trans woman if he was actually alt-right. Plus, these LGBTQ pride badges. Why would a guy who is alt-right hang out with Thuman and Shuli, two black women and leftists, I think? Why would he make a video against Just a Robot, an anti-SJW movie review bro, or whatever he is? Like, this argument, like, falls apart the moment you actually get to know Beckett or even talk to him once, which Bonk refuses to do. He refuses to watch Cope and Seethe's videos about himself or the Saberspark stuff to this day. Regardless, when I spoke to Cope and Seethe, he'd been in contact with Saberspark, who was asking to be completely left off the record.
Now, that conversation I had with Saberspark is unfortunately off the record. He doesn't feel comfortable at the moment coming out and making random public statements, and I'll be honest, I do respect that decision.
Saber was still building up a case for a potential lawsuit, and if you know anything about the legal process, you need to shut the fuck up. You can't be talking too much to the public about your case because, you know, if you share too much, whatever evidence you provide to the public can't be used in a courtroom because it's already been under public scrutiny. And whoever looks over the evidence has to have an unbiased perspective. So a judge and jury has to be looking at this evidence for the first time in a courtroom, vetted by lawyers, not by Twitter. So we weren't sure if he'd be willing to talk to us too much because his response video seemed to be the final time he was ever gonna speak on it. That was until Emily went public with who she was, which was the final push for Saber to go on record with Beckett. In a way, you know, as bad as an interviewer as I am, self-admittedly, I'm glad that the interview happened. It gave both Saber and Beckett something to compare and contrast with what their side of the story was. They had her on record, so now it was just all a means of debunking her record. Beckett kept me in the loop the entire time. He showed me the text messages. He told me about the process of his research, who he was talking to, who he was able to get in touch with. And many people would say that I'm biased for doing this, that I shouldn't even be giving Beckett the time of day. I mean, look how he handles himself on Twitter. Look, he says the R word. Look, he's an ableist. Look, I don't agree with everything Beckett does, okay? The most you can say about him is that he's a dick. And he knows that. He says so himself that he can be an asshole. And normally, I don't like people that revel in the fact that they're assholes who only make content for entertainment. However, when speaking to him one-on-one, it did genuinely seem like he cared about Saber and his situation. He did seem passionate about the truth. So I can respect his pursuit of that whilst also acknowledging that I can't control how he conducts himself online. Like, listen, the guy is 30 or something. He pays his own bills and quid. I can't control his language and scrub his mouth with soap when he uses a slur. I am not his mother. Even if he is the biggest asshole in the world, Beckett is one thing that Bonk and KP are not. He is upfront and he's honest. Beckett didn't hide the fact that he didn't like my video. He told me straight to my face that he thought it was bad. I knew that before his video came out because he's not gonna blindside me or bullshit me. He was upfront. He kept me up to date, and getting information from him wasn't the equivalent of pulling my teeth out. And I was some help to him too. He got to talk to Enter because I recommended it. He got to talk to Emily because I convinced her to have that conversation. So forgive me for working with the alt-right douchebag Beckett instead of the guy who jerks it to Wootmaster. My bad. So let's talk about the downfall of Emily Jones. Did we keep KP in the loop with Beckett's investigation? No. And it felt shitty to do, but it was necessary to do. After we told KP of the Dropbox information, she immediately ran to Cope and Seethe and told him all about it. She also decided to use this Dropbox docs as a threat against Emily. Even if I did keep KP in the loop about absolutely everything Beckett was sharing with me, there was no way I could trust her not to run her mouth. So I didn't, because I don't trust her. Despite my best efforts in forming the timeline based on con footage and tweets, there was one piece of this puzzle that just didn't fit in the picture at all. And that piece was Emily pulling away from Saberspark after EQLA 2012. Based on the text message data that Saber was fortunate enough to find, we can see it's not true. Now, I should point this out because I know this is an argument. I know there are victims of rape who will still remain cordial with their rapist. I know people in my personal life who still remain in contact or try to remain on friendly terms with those that have hurt them, on the basis of either keeping the peace or just being in denial that they were ever hurt to begin with. This does happen when victims are in denial that they were victimized. They'll try and maintain a relationship with the person that hurt them so that they don't have to face the reality of what actually happened. And if that was Emily's excuse, I'd completely understand that, but that wasn't her excuse. She claims to have been a massive people pleaser, which, I mean, sure, I guess I can see that. But aside from that, she also claims to have forgotten about these text messages entirely, which I find that really hard to believe. I spoke to this girl for a month. We asked her so many detailed questions, so we had every inch of this story down to a T. She was able to remember things about the cons and the hotels from 10 years ago. She remembers each and every controversy and had an answer for all of her past internet blunders. She remembered times and dates and had an answer for everything. Except for this. The one thing that makes her narrative fall apart. She coincidentally just forgets about it. She pulled away from Saber after that when the text messages clearly show that that's just not true. Like, her claim was so heavily banking on the text message data and the Skype logs no longer existing. And if she was honest about that, I wouldn't be harping on it so much, but It's the fact that she wasn't honest. And now I feel like I should have just stuck to thinking that she was a deceptive liar just based on her controversies. I want to go back to that because I was right then. I was correct. I didn't know it, but I was correct in assuming that she was lying. But I just didn't want to let her down like KP already did. I didn't want to do exactly what Bonk thought I was going to do, which was, make drama content that paints her out to be like a bad person. And after our conversations, despite her flaws and her past internet drama, I didn't think she was an awful person. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect victim, but clearly she lied to my face. And that's so... It's so fucking infuriating. I couldn't catch her in a lie, I couldn't prove that she was directly lying to my face. But now I can prove it. And I'm fucking pissed.
I have taken time to fully reflect on this entire situation, and it has been emotional and a very major challenge. It has really shined a spotlight on not only my understanding on how everything has happened since my first testimony being released, but also especially regarding how I have carried self-destructive habits with me into adulthood that I have clung onto since being a child. Not being able to remember these moments of me betraying myself through acting like I was not only fine, but even enjoyed taking part in these occurrences and reliving them again when brought to my attention felt extremely heavy on me, as I sat with myself asking why I needed to do this for years. It isn't easy being 8 and feeling like the responsibility of your entire life changing is on you if you spoke up and told an adult what was happening, or being 12 worrying that if you said something to the teacher as a classmate assaults you, that maybe you would be the one to get in trouble because you didn't understand. I didn't want to confront that reality by telling him and instead just played along because for the longest time I remained in spaces with people where I was not wanted. I regret not expressing it and regret putting myself in a space where I shouldn't have stayed. While I still am firm on consent not being given in these two situations, I don't want Saber to continue taking heat for what happened because I really do not think he realized this. I do still believe he should have been careful and more mindful about his approach when interacting with me and communicating clearly with me to make sure I wanted these sexual encounters before initiating them. It would have been much easier to avoid them altogether, but just as he could have done that, I could have been more upfront by either telling him or stop interacting entirely. I feel really good about having a proper path carved out for me when it comes to the work I have to do to finally heal from not only this situation, but other sexual traumas I've endured. Healing is something we need to take control of ourselves because no one else is going to do the work. While the people-pleasing was something I developed in a time of need, I can't carry that with me anymore as an adult because it is no longer serving me.
I saw the writing on the wall, so I decided to help those who were more competent in getting the truth out there because, by that point, that's all I gave a shit about. And it sucked. It really fucking sucked to try and help this person, befriend them somewhat, actually get to know more about them, and it all turned out to be total bullshit. And having to feed her off to Beckett, that sucked too because I knew he was going to tell her about the text messages and how her story didn't add up. I knew that. I knew that was going to happen. But I thought maybe she'd give him a better explanation. Maybe she would say something to Beckett that would change his mind and change the narrative again. And we could all be on the same page. And that didn't happen. I didn't get that. I want to say this directly to Saberspark. I know I've spoken poorly of you in the past, so I understand if you don't want to engage my words. I have criticisms of you, don't get me wrong. There are things we don't agree on. But I think entertaining Emily at all was a massive, massive mistake. I'm really, really sorry. I feel like I was lied to. I wanted to believe this girl. But after hearing your interview with Beckett, I think we can at least agree we're on the same page in saying that we don't want this whole thing to be yet another example of why people won't speak out against their abusers. People will point to this and be like, well, remember the Saberspark story? That's why you should assume that people who come out about this stuff are lying. Look at what he had to go through. I don't want this to be another Slazo or a Quite, and clearly you don't either. I don't like living in a world where people lie about this because, it's rare, and the people who use these stories of false accusations use them as cannon fodder to put people down, to discredit real stories, and even systemically credible stories they don't amount to anything. Like, people who actually have been violated have it so hard because it feels like systemically everything is against them and will side with the bad guys, which is why I was really happy when you shared Rain as a resource. It shows you care. And for doubting that at all, I'm really sorry. I mean, at least, like, the silver lining of this insanity is that people know what Rain is. I mean, that was a really pleasant surprise seeing that in Saber's video. It felt so genuine to see that. I hope that I can raise more money for Rain in the future because they are a really great resource. They have all the stats and they work with so many victims. They actually know their shit. Unlike... Before we move on, I would like to read this Discord message posted to KP's community. I have asked you guys to stop talking about this publicly in the server. I don't know the exact specifics of the new information, but what I do know is there is a general implication that there was some kind of sexual encounter. And unless you were there, or someone recovers video footage of said encounter, I'm stopping this in its tracks. We as third-party people can never really know. Is the accuser perfect? Doesn't seem like it. Is this also leaning into some perfect victim ideology? Absolutely. I understand some parties are hurt by the situation, but there can also be multiple parties hurt, and I am tired of that not even being a consideration. This is a complicated situation where multiple things can be true. Fucking enough. I show you this because I believe KP and Bonk are one and the same. I know Beckett claims that based on his interactions that KP seems remorseful. This clearly shows that she's not, and neither is Bonk. Both refuse to watch Beckett's content and listen to important newfound information. Both are clearly willing to double, triple, quadruple down instead of just apologizing. Both are annoying, and both are willing to use allegations as a weapon, serving as terrible representations for victims. I think the only way we can talk about Bonk is to use him as an example of what not to do if you want to fight for victims. I swear to God, the only thing that ages well in my Black Griffin video is the Bonk segment. Let it be stated for the record, I never liked that motherfucker. I still don't. And let me explain to you why. So let's reminisce and remind y'all what my initial reason for not liking Bonk was. Now, I did want to talk about the only point that this document brings up that I do somewhat agree with. Pony Fan Don't, or Doink as he is asked to be called, has made some very concerning posts using the Pony Fan Don't account. Aside from defending other Twitter users of drawing sexualized pony characters and claiming that it's fine because they're not real children that exist, they also have claimed that Gabriel provided voice work for a video where Sweetie Belle is depicted with male DNA on her face, and I think sharing this, even if these characters aren't real, is very strange to do. Plus, it's neither confirmed that Gabe had any involvement with this weird sexual music video anyways, so I don't even know why Pony Fandont is providing it as evidence. Pony Fandont has also posted weird pictures of minor characters from MLP and even made tweets saying that age was just a number. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of context to any of this aside from it being like fucking weird. My biggest issue with Fandont personally, aside from them being inconsistent between accounts, is the fact that they want this story to have their narrative be the prominent one. Instead of recognizing the complexities of the situation, he constantly speaks on behalf of people who already said that they don't regard themselves as victims. And instead of respecting that, he just ignores that and is very my way or the highway about it. Either you believe that Claire is a victim of Gabriel, or you defend a groomer. There's no moral gray you can take up, it's just what he wants the narrative to be. And I mean, I understand why, but getting into literal arguments with people that you're trying to convince are grooming victims is just not how you get people to self-reflect on their potentially harmful relationships. And you cannot be advocating for the safety of children in the brony community whilst posting sexual content of characters from the show who are minors and claiming that, well, that's okay because they're not real. It just makes you look like a hypocrite, or at the very least someone who draws the line at really weird places. The reasons I gave in my Black Griffin video boils down to 3 things. 1, his past is really fucking shady. 2, he has gotten things about Black Griffin completely wrong in the past. And 3, him fighting with Claire and Michelle, 2 people he is claiming are victims that he wants to help, actually doesn't help at all. Because all he's effectively doing is trying to force words in their mouths and put labels on them that they don't identify with. And all of this makes the cases for Destiny and the Snapchat victim and Jai Lim all the more up for unfair scrutiny. If these people are telling the truth about Gabe, Bonk builds a terrible case for them because the representative pushing for justice with their platform is a nutcase. Bonk, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to believe that he is the leading charge or the de facto head of the story, despite the fact that he is the only one that is talking about it. He's the only one putting the case against Gabe together. I mean, I know Reddit's picked it up too, and there's that whole Google Doc, and they tried their hand at it, but I mean, Bonk is very controlling of the narrative. You want to know something that's really, really funny? Despite my video effectively presenting their case and all of their findings, despite linking the Google document in my bio, despite standing with Destiny and the Snapchat victim, despite literally validating their work, Bonk and Sophie hated my Black Griffin video. They hated it. And the primary reason is because I wouldn't lick Bonk's taint. Like I said, I came at the Black Griffin story being an outsider looking in, someone not emotionally invested with anyone. And I thought that my criticisms of Bonk was going to help him more than anything, will help him self-reflect, maybe. I thought that my critique was fair, but no. All it did was make him get all upset because apparently I didn't see him as this victim of people trying to silence the story. Here's the thing, even if Bonk does make a point that I do agree with, like an age gap relationship where one of the parties was underage when they first met is really weird and uncomfortable. I can't disagree with that. The logistics of that relationship will always be up for question and speculation inherently because of how Gabe and Claire met. But even if Bonk makes a good point, he is so defensive and will fight tooth and nail with everyone. He doesn't pick his battles wisely. He just wants to fight just to fight. So, Bonk, let's fight. Here is my case against you. In my Black Griffin video, we talked about the past post history of Brody Fandon't, where it seems that the account was once used as a roleplay account for the character Screwball from My Little Pony. Bonk himself confirms this, but the thing is, Screwball is speculated to be an underage character, though this isn't directly stated on the show. What Bonk would do is roleplay being in a relationship with a character that is stated to be 19 years old, who intentionally de-ages his character with magic or something to date Screwball. Bonk justifies their online roleplay of this weird relationship by saying that age is just a number, hence the full context of what that tweet was about. This isn't the only odd thing in Bonk's back catalog, as he has commissioned not safe for work artwork of his fursona with Noelle, an underage Deltarune character. Bonk essentially uses the justification of their drawings. There's not a crime actually happening because they're fictional characters and you can't victimize a cartoon character. Yes, I shit you not, the bastard is using the Earl Doobie "they're just cartoons" defense. I want to die. Bonk was really mad that I would bring this up in my video because apparently these were things that happened when he was a minor. He didn't know any better. He doesn't stand by it anymore as an adult. And sure, like we just spoke about, the online brony fandom normalized a lot of stuff that was not okay. Nazism, shipping adults with minors, princess molestia. So a young mind engaging in the online brony sphere, I can understand this being embarrassing in retrospect, especially if a lot of this is being normalized and seen as okay because the fandom is so anti-drama and pro-forgiveness no matter what. It just lets this stuff slide, only for Bonk to grow up and look back on that and realize that it wasn't okay. That has to be a painful deconstruction. I would know. I had to do the same shit coming out of the online anime community. You know, it turns out a bunch of grown men advocating for lolicon is not fucking normal, actually. The reason why people aren't letting this shit go is because it's very clear that this isn't something Bonk grew out of. The shit in his teens, I can set aside if he was actually ashamed of it and holds different values now. But it's obvious that he doesn't. This didn't stay in his teenage years. It's something that he has defended well into his adulthood. Let me ask you a question. Say you're a survivor of grooming by an adult, and you go to some online activist or investigator. Would you, as a survivor looking for support, go to a supposed activist who engages with content depicting minor characters sexually? No. You absolutely would not.
And no, I'm not going to show it to you, but Wootmaster did at one point seemingly either draw or retweet pornographic images of Sweetie Belle.
Let me ask you another question. Say you're a survivor of rape, and you do the same thing, you go online for support. Would you go to a guy who has a rape fetish to tell your story? No, I don't think you would.
You'll notice Fandont's OC is a hyena with a glowing eye, but this isn't just an aesthetic choice. Somebody handed me the character sheet for Bonk's character, and it turns out Bonk has something of a rape fetish.
I fell for you since I first saw you, but you don't know I exist. I've thought about introducing myself, seeing if you'd fall for me normally, but the risk of failure is too painful, and I'm growing more and more impatient, and I have the power to change that. With just one look, you're mine. The rest of this comic is lesbian porn with Judy Hopps. I'm not showing you that because I don't hate you. Maybe it's a stretch. Maybe it's actually like a hypnosis fetish or something. But I find it odd that specifically in their character description, Bonk specifies that his glowing eye thing in his character is specifically for mind controlling people. I don't really see how that's consensual. One glance into the iris causes any command from Helena to be obeyed. One of the biggest red flags about Bonk is their friendship and frequent defense of Wootmaster. For those who are unaware, Wootmaster is a My Little Pony artist who likes to draw not safe for work pony and furry characters. However, many of his subjects of interest are usually not within the age range where that would be appropriate. For example, Smolder from My Little Pony and Spike are usually depicted as younger characters, yet Wootmaster has drawn both and retweeted porn of these younger characters. Now, in My Little Pony, characters' ages aren't really clarified ever in the show, so you could argue with the ambiguity. Woot could just feign ignorance. However, his secondary fetish account called No Razor has retweets of trans or intersex pornography of characters like Ryuko Matoi, who is a 17-year-old girl, and Tomoki Kuroki, who is 15. And in both of those cases, those characters' ages are not ambiguous. That is very well known. It is specified in these animes. That's how old they are. But in case that wasn't bad enough, taken from Beckett's video, proof of Wootmaster retweeting fetish artwork of Sweetie Belle. Also, the dude is a straight-up zoophile, retweeting pornographic artwork depicting non-anthropomorphized horses. Just regular-ass horses. But believe it or not, it gets even worse than that. Wootmaster was in a relationship with someone called Potluck or Zeeb Demon. Zeeb Demon was someone who posted the Youth Attraction Pride flag on their profile and then got personally banned by Elon Musk. Now, granted, Bonk does call Zeeb a pedophile, but will seemingly ride or die on defending Wootmaster. I could show you, every single tweet where he is outwardly defending Wootmaster, but I think it's just best to hear it from Bonk himself.
Wootmaster has had a history, kind of, with his artwork can kind of be seen as controversial for reasons being that like a lot of it involves like characters canonically underage or something like that. So can you just kind of explain to me your feelings on like Whoop Master as a content creator, because they've been in controversy before for this specific thing, and I just was curious about like why you would choose to defend that whilst also trying to like expose somebody else for grooming. It seems like a contradiction to be like, I'm okay with drawings of underage characters in certain situations, but I'm absolutely gonna die on the hill to say that somebody groomed somebody, kind of thing.
I think that's I'm not trying to like be hostile or defensive.
Well,
I just think that's very short-sighted. No,
Okay.
I just think it's entirely different. Like if you think one is bad or both are bad, that's fine. I'm not even trying to debate that. I'm just trying to say that there are leagues different. And it seems very short-sighted to say that it's the same thing and contradictory. Because there are genuine people that exist that are being harmed, and multiple of them in the Griffin situation. And I think that Woot fights for a lot of people that need help. I think he is very genuine in all that. If he ever did anything that Griffin did, I would not be so willing to defend him. In fact, I would probably just not talk to him ever again. And I don't really talk to him all that much to begin with.
Okay.
But he hasn't done anything to harm anyone, as far as I'm aware. I don't really I don't want to argue this point because I don't think it matters to the grand scheme of everything, and I know people don't like when I argue this, and they act like I'm ruining everything because I'm talking about it, but I'm only talking about it because people bring it up. But I don't feel like artwork of fictional characters, regardless of what age or anything that they are, has any effect on real people unless it's a drawing of a real child, and then that crosses the line greatly for me. If I had any thought that Woot Master wanted to get with actual children, I would not be talking about Woot Master. In any good sense, at least.
Right.
But I don't think that he has that. I don't believe that. He's given me no reason to believe that. And I know people... I keep saying the same, I know people this, I know people that. I understand that there is a lot of things that would require explaining my stance on and explaining what the differences are, and once I go into that, the conversation's too uncomfortable for people, and I think that they don't listen to what I'm saying, and they just go, he defended that thing, so therefore she shouldn't be talking about anything ever. But I don't think he has harmed anyone, and that's the difference for me. I don't think it matters.
Well, I think we had a conversation, right, about, like, the whole Nazis and the brony fandom, how normalizing it, and, like, how normalizing certain things can also equally be harmful, right? If you're, like, being like, nah, this is normal, that's equally as bad, or saying, like, nah, that's not as big of a deal, that's equally as bad. Could you not concede that maybe, you know, drawing characters like that normalizes the idea that people of that age can be put in sexual situations and it can be seen as fine? Like, because that's
I think that's a lot more fair of an argument than most people give. I agree that you are making a fair argument there.
Because that's my main argument when it comes to it, really. That's what I say to everyone. It's just like, sure, these characters may not be real, but drawing them sexualized, knowing the age that they are in the show, could normalize the idea for real kids that watch the show and love the show, seeing them like that, be like, oh, that could be normalized for me too. Like, that's my argument. It's normalization of something that I don't think should be.
I believe that it should not be in a place where people uncomfortable with it and people who are minors can see. It should not be accessible. It can't just be posted willy-nilly. Like, I think that is wrong. Like I said, I think that dissecting it, a lot of people will instantly feel uncomfortable because the topic of anything sexual can make a lot of people uncomfortable. So I think a lot of people will not want to hear this next part, but I think that there's a lot of gray. There's a lot of differences and variables in all this. I don't think it's necessarily that like Smolder the dragon from My Little Pony, when Wootmaster looks at art of them or whatever, I don't think it's necessarily the fact that they are like a minor character that is why he wants to see art of that. I think there's a lot of different variables where, and it's uncomfortable for me to talk about too. I don't like defending. I don't want a side in the war. I just don't think he's a bad person. I don't think he's hurt anyone. But I think that, but to explain why I think it is different from sorry, what was your question again? I'm sorry.
I'm asking if you concede to the fact that like Wootmaster's artwork and the past artwork he's made that has been controversial normalizes certain things that are harmful and therefore shouldn't be defended.
Yeah, so I would compare that to like people that make like gore art. Like, would you make the argument that that is normalizing murder and therefore people are going to be more likely to murder? I think that is, while people don't want to see it that way, it is kind of one for one. Like, people think it's different, but that perception is just that one is normal to draw and one isn't. I think maybe it does normalize it in a way, and maybe that is bad, but I don't know enough to determine that that is happening. I just think that there are certain venues where if you want to do that, go for it. I don't, as long as it's not hurting anyone. If it's not of a real person who is not consenting to that, or is a child and therefore can't consent to that, I don't really care if a cartoon dragon is being harmed because they aren't being harmed because they're not real. So but in the sense of it being normalized, I guess I don't know for certain that it is helping actual predators get away with anything. Well, I think that, like, things like Grand Theft Auto, I think that there are violent people that really like violent games, but I don't think the violent games made them violent people, you know?
I suppose so, but I think it's more so how that artwork is being utilized, right? Like, when people use Grand Theft Auto, they don't use that as, like, a simulation to things that they're going to, you know, do bad things in the future.
I agree. I don't think that Woot is going to do the things either. I think it's the same in that regard, too.
Sure, but, like, why even introduce a sexual element to minor characters at all? Like, that doesn't seem very necessary. Like, you can sexualize characters that are adults, and that's, like, you know, they're in the territory of that to do so, but most people are just, like, these are essentially lolly characters, right? Like, it's like, do not lewd the lolly. That's, like, a big thing in most fandoms. It's like, don't fucking do that shit. Like,
I think it's the same I think it's a slippery slope argument, and I kind of hate that argument. I'm gonna be honest. Like,
okay.
like with what I was saying with Grand Theft Auto, the same thing can also be applied where people, or a lot of like people, were upset with Grand Theft Auto for depicting violence and allowing you to play as it, and they were saying that this was going to lead to more violence. And you could make the same arguments for that, where, okay, well, why would you need to do that when you could have a game where you are nice to everyone? Why does it have to be an option? I don't think it is necessarily a desire to do these things in real life. I don't think it has to translate to that. And I think that people who do have those inclinations were going to also gravitate to doing this out of real life anyways. I honestly, I think there might be something to it being so common and accepted that it becomes so widespread that people get away with more. I think that could be a possibility, and that could lead to actual harm. Like with you were comparing with the Nazi situation. I can see that. I just can't confirm that is happening. So I don't want, and I also feel pretty safe saying that Wootmaster isn't a predator.
Right.
So I don't want to condemn him for that. And when he has fought for people I don't want to dismiss that just because people are uncomfortable with some of the things he does separate to that.
One last question, and I'll be like super specific. Say that you did have an inappropriate conversation with an adult. Say you and this adult are in the same community. Bronies, let's just say you're bronies. So, you're both bronies, and let's just say that you want to warn the wider scope of the community. Would you go to a fellow brony who's really into full con? No, I don't think so. I mentioned this in the Black Griffin video that I made, that Bonk has made an accusation about Gabe that was just completely wrong. Let's go over that in detail. Bonk claims that Gabe provided vocals for a video that sings about having sex with a young pony character. This led many to believe that Gabe was singing a song about wanting to have sex with Sweetie Belle, hence grooming. The thumbnail of this video depicts pornography of the Cutie Mark Crusaders that are explicitly stated in My Little Pony to be foals or fillies, aka young ponies. The truth of this video is that it's a re-upload. The original was found with Sweetie Belle as the thumbnail, but clearly this shows that the original vocalist was not Black Griffin. Now, Bonk did retract this claim, but I want to ask you the question. This video that Bonk is referencing is completely unknown to most people. It has 4,000 views in the 8 years it's been on the platform, and it's the only video on this channel. So, my question is, how did Bonk find this video? How did he know where to look for it? Granted, he couldn't find the original one either. That one is 10 years old and only has like 5,000 views. It is incredibly obscure. But regardless, I find it interesting that he was able to find the re-upload with porn of minor pony characters as the thumbnail over the original. I think the only way he would have been aware that this video existed and was out there on YouTube is because of Bonk's interest in full con. Now, I must be very clear, this is more of an allegation of Bonk's interest. With private likes and his main Twitter account gone, there's not really any direct, obvious evidence of this. This is more of an accusation that is backed up by the fact that he used to roleplay as Screwball, which the community has considered to be a minor character. And also, you know, the association with Wootmaster, once again, retweeting porn of Sweetie Belle. But for those unaware, Full Con is basically the brony community's version of Lolicon. Media that depicts sexualized minor characters or a person who is attracted to lollies, or young female characters. Now again, a lot of this comes from Wootmaster himself, who openly goons to whatever character he wants, regardless of age. And Bonk defending this by just saying that no real harm is happening, because these are just characters that don't exist. And I shit you not, he's making the argument that getting offended over drawn porn of a minor is the equivalent to thinking that video games cause violence. I'm gonna play back exactly what I said about Brony Fandom fighting with Claire Corlett. Instead of recognizing the complexities of the situation, he constantly speaks on behalf of people who already said that they don't regard themselves as victims. And instead of respecting that, he just ignores that and is very my way or the highway about it. Either you believe that Claire is a victim of Gabriel, or you defend a groomer. There's no moral gray you can take up, it's just what he wants the narrative to be. And I mean, I understand why, but getting into literal arguments with people that you're trying to convince are grooming victims is just not how you get people to self-reflect on their potentially harmful relationships. Now I want to read you a DM that Brony Fandom sent to Claire Corlett personally, found here in Beckett's video. No, you're a liar. You've constantly lied, and you're lying now. Either you told your lawyer your version of events, or your lawyer didn't say any of this. I have not harassed you. I have not slandered anyone. Nothing I've done has been illegal, immoral, or done in the pursuit of any kind of revenge or bad intent. The same cannot be said for what you've done. You don't like me posting public information, and so you try to make me into some sort of devil. You can't even hold a conversation without needing to take what you've perceived as a stab at me. You think dropping my IRL information in the DMs is some sort of gotcha moment? You're fucking awful. You aren't mature. Even when I point out how you're being petty and childish, throwing emojis at me, you keep doing it. I try to see what you want to show me. I tell you it's private, and you call me a liar. When I show you that it is, you threaten to sue me. Now, I am not someone who likes it when a significant creator or person of interest uses lawsuits and threats to sue someone when they aren't a fan of what they're saying. I also do not condone doxing or seeking out someone's private information. This has happened time and time again. But I think in this case, I should have at least been a little more charitable to Claire. Claire, in her messages with Bonk, is trying to handle things at least as cordially as possible. Just understand what the fuck Bonk's issue is with her and Gabe. And Bonk is just being so dismissive of whatever she has to say. I understand the argument that a victim of grooming is not going to know if they're being groomed because that's the whole point of grooming. Making that conditioning feel normal when it isn't. And this is still very much true. However, my issue is that Bonk is more obsessed with pushing this story of Claire's grooming rather than the actual people that do claim to be a victim of Gabe. Bonk prioritizes being in the right about Claire's marriage secretly being a plot of a groomer than he is uplifting Destiny or the Snapchat victim. At least they are willing to call themselves victims. They are out here saying, we were groomed. And yet, Bonk's priority is just to keep pushing this whole thing with Gabe and Claire instead of doing anything to verify their testimonies. Why? Why focus so much on the people who are asking you to stop labeling them as victims rather than work with those who are willing to go on the record and say that they are victims? Well, it's probably because he can't. Like Destiny had mentioned, she deleted the account in which this occurred, and the Snapchat victim didn't save the dick pics to prove that they happened. And although I understand why, since, they're children and they wouldn't have the hindsight to save the evidence, it's still a risk to platform them without something to support their claims. Testimony is evidence. It's important evidence, but it usually gets classified under circumstantial evidence over physical and direct. And usually what builds a good case is either a smoking gun, physical or direct evidence, or a lot of circumstantial evidence that paints a picture. And this is something that I even had to deconstruct when I was speaking to Beckett. When people on the internet say there is no evidence, that does not mean that they are saying these people are lying. When Beckett says that there is no direct evidence, he's not pointing the finger at Destiny or the Snapchat victim and saying, you both are liars. That's not what he's saying. This is even something that I had to come to terms with. He's not saying they're lying. Nobody is saying that these people are lying. He's just saying that there needs to be more. What Bonk is trying to do is equate a mounting of circumstantial evidence as direct evidence and accuse anyone who is asking questions or is just trying to verify information. He's accusing them of trying to discredit and disregard the victims and call them liars for no reason. I am willing to hear Destiny out. I'm willing to hear the Snapchat victim out. I'm willing to show my support and respect to them. I'm sure a lot of people would, but all people are asking for is more. And claiming that's not reasonable and defending groomers is just kind of dumb. There is one last thing I want to put out there as my final critique of Bonk. As it's known to everyone now, Brony Fandon't is an account that is ran by two people, Sophie Scruggs and Bonk. At present, it is just Bonk running the account. But I have my own issues with Sophie Scruggs. Sophie's been platforming allegations against Gabe longer than even Bonk has, and presented herself as an expert in the brony scene in Courtney's video. As we know now, her reach doesn't extend as far as she claims it does, and this entire situation has put her attendance at risk when Beckett spoke to Scott Thornwing, director of Everfree Northwest. And if Everfree Northwest wants a good reason to ban Sophie besides all this drama, how about the fact that after Bonk tried to off himself due to the online harassment in relation to the Brony Fandon't account, she still gave Bonk the account back? I think Enter described it best. This is like giving an alcoholic access to the liquor cabinet after getting their stomach pumped. Why would you ever allow anyone who is prone to suicidal tendencies due to poorly reacting to online harassment into the account that he used to streamline his suicide? Sophie clearly doesn't care for Bonk's well-being if she's effectively retying the news after it broke the first time. But aside from Sophie, another character we should highlight is Amy New. Amy New is Peter New's wife, who Claire has known personally, or at least knows of them.
Where the switch was with Amy, I don't know if my own father has talked to either of them, but I do know that my dad has reached out to people that I've worked with and warned them about me when I had told my parents that, you know, I was in a relationship with Gabe. And this is when I was almost 20. I don't know when the swap or switch was for Amy. I had met her a few times before. I knew she was married to Peter New. I think I can't remember a whole lot about her, but I don't know. I don't know. She's like kind of mixed up in the fan world, and she came first as a fan. To my knowledge, she was a fan first, and then she just kind of started dating Peter, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And she was kind of like a fan of My Little Pony and a fan of Peter, and then started dating.
So this is where we need to talk about this group's true motives. But I must make this absolutely clear that this is merely just me theory crafting. Throughout this process, I tried to speak to Sophie and Amy, but they do not want to speak to me. I wonder why, or at least I'll be giving them a good reason now. Could these people come out and just say something along the lines of, nuh-uh, just to debunk what I'm saying? Sure, but I doubt it. So let me present to you my final argument against Brony Fandom. After Beckett's first video went live featuring Claire and Michelle's interviews, Bonk and Amy both claimed that Beckett's video wasn't legal. The reason they felt that way was because of an audio recording featuring Claire, her father, what I believe is also her mom in the call, having a group therapy session. Now, due to a misunderstanding of HIPAA, Bonk claims that the recording violates the consent of the people in this call. He doesn't really explain how when speaking to Phineas. He just kind of says, and I quote, "I'm saying only what I'm allowed to say. Not everyone had given consent. That's the truth. And there's no reason to believe Claire asked at all. I'm saying only what I am allowed to say. Not everyone had given consent. That's the truth." Interesting. So, I have a few questions. The first kind of being like a compound question. What exactly aren't you allowed to say? What's holding you back in giving us more details? What are you hiding? And the most important question, how do you know that? You claim that not everyone had given consent to this therapy session. My question is, how do you know that? Amy New says the same thing. I don't know if you know this or if it matters much anymore. That recording Claire played on the Cope and Seethe thing was a private family therapist session. I don't think Ian is a great person, but I wish people would understand that they were speaking openly to a therapist. They were trying to get help. That's interesting, Amy. How do you know that? Also, here's another interesting thing. How do either of these people know that it was a call from a therapy session? If you watch Beckett's video, he doesn't mention that this was from a family therapy session at all.
Now, many people haven't heard this. It's part of one of the Gabe defense documents and a little bit difficult to access. So, with permission, I'm just gonna play it for you.
And if you go to the defense document by Billy Bustup, where these recordings were originally published, but they weren't accessible, they don't mention the origins of the recorded calls either. The only people that made it a fact that these were recorded calls in a group family therapy session was Amy New and Bonk. But how do they know that? Aside from how they seemingly knew this information, they also know for a fact that not everyone in that call gave consent to be recorded. My question is, who? Clearly it isn't Claire if she's posting this online, something as the patient she is allowed to do. Patient rights state that a patient can make any of their medical history known to anyone, including the public, as it is their right. And if she's the one recording, clearly she consents. Is it the therapist? Well, when asked directly, Bonk claims to have never spoken to Claire's therapist or even knows who they are. Despite how concerned he seems to be of this therapist losing their job, he can't seem to prove that they didn't consent to this session being recorded. The only person that leaves is Claire's parents, but most specifically, Ian James Corlett. Claire has claimed for years that Ian was controlling and abusive. She was even convinced that Brony Fandom was her father because he, self-admittedly, made alt accounts to call Gabe out. And yet despite all this, Brony Fandom seemingly has defended Ian on multiple occasions. There wasn't any abuse to talk about. Aside from saying abuse happened, your only specifics you gave were your parents doing things that seemingly were attempts to keep you away from Gabriel, which is a very reasonable thing for them to do. As for abuse, I do not know whether or not Ian is an abuser. All I do know is Claire's message claiming examples of abuse reads pretty much more to me as a parent wanting to desperately get their child away from a predator. If I'm wrong, give me the part of her message that is different. As for Saber and Paleo, yes, they defended his grooming. They also aggressively harassed anyone who showed empathy to Claire's father. When he spoke about missing his daughter, they implied Ian was an abuser, but that remains to be seen and doesn't justify how they spoke. Even in my own coverage of the Black Griffin allegations, I said that I was willing to believe Ian was abusive. I just didn't know because I don't know him personally or Claire. But I was willing to at least believe it when Claire says it. Bonk is not, for some reason. Why? I thought you wanted to believe victims, so why are you so dismissive to claims of an abusive father? And the thing is, Ian isn't unfamiliar with Brony Fandom, as he follows the Brony Fandom account on Twitter. But that's not all. He also follows Sophie Scruggs on both Instagram and Twitter. And when Ian posted an open letter to his daughter in response to not being invited to Claire and Gabe's wedding, guess who is reposting it in Ian's responses? Amy New. So let's recap. Amy New was told in person by Ian about the allegations against Gabe. Amy is even reposting his open letter to Claire. Although Brony Fandom has claimed to have never met Ian or taken orders from him, Ian is at least aware of him. He follows the Brony Fandom account alongside Sophie Scruggs on Twitter and Instagram. We know that he has made alternative accounts before, self-admittedly. It's even suspected that this Flutter Cult account that called Cope and Seethe alt-right before Bonk did is allegedly Ian's alt. And, honestly, it has to be him, because all of the same actors are following the Flutter Cult account. Amy New, Sophie, Bonk, Wootmaster. And when you think about it, Bonk and Ian have a lot in common in terms of how they present the allegations against Black Griffin and how they act online. If we are to believe that the Flutter Cult account is Ian, then both Bonk and Ian have a few things in common. They both relentlessly called people alt-right, both to Cope and Seethe and Black Griffin. Both are harping at other entities like Billy Bustup and Momocon to have Gabe removed. And both accounts are obsessively tweeting about Black Griffin constantly. They have a lot of similarities that I honestly don't blame Claire for thinking Bonk was her dad.
And then I had speculated actually for a while that this could have been my own dad, because my dad has done stuff like this before. The language was very similar. I had alluded to some, sassy remarks I made with Brony Fandom's this account. And I was just trying to kind of gauge the waters, and I'm like, yeah, I found out that it wasn't him, and I was like kind of relieved, but I also was kind of mad because I was like, well, dang, now we just have like another crazy person with the same kind of mentality.
But if there's one thing that I would like to point to as a direct correlation, it would be this. Bonk mentions that the recording was a HIPAA violation. When I spoke to Phineas, he had mentioned that Bonk claimed that it was illegal because it was a violation of privacy and shouldn't be on YouTube. What's so funny about that is that Beckett did get a privacy complaint. He never made this public. He's only ever shared it with me in private and has given me permission to share it. Now, it doesn't say directly who filed this privacy concern, but the timestamp is the entire recording. So here's my question. Did Bonk report the video for privacy? He seems pretty adamant that the video needs to come down, but usually privacy complaints are filed via the person whose privacy is being violated, not on behalf of someone else. So my question is, did Ian take Bonk's advice in claiming the video is illegal? I also find it really interesting that Bonk claims that he never has seen Copensea's video or is even going to entertain it, but he will so confidently talk about the contents of said video, even straight up saying things that are just not said in the video at all. Like, he claims that Claire said that Sophie forced her to pet her snail when Claire never says this.
And I'm using this as a specific example, and I actually had to go back and research this because I had forgot about it because it meant nothing to me. Sorry, Sophie. I'm not trying to be rude here, but I don't remember that I complimented your snail once. That was something that I did in the moment because I was being friendly and nice. And now somehow I'm getting backstabbed because you decided to tweet out to everybody years ago, the last time you got frustrated that I was in a relationship with Gabe, before we were married and we had announced that we were dating, you said you were worried for your dear friend, your close friend, Claire, me. And I'm sitting here going, who the hell are you? Have I even met you before? Like, what the frick? Then I have to go back and I find out, oh, thank God. I actually did meet her. Okay, so she's not, totally crazy. But then I keep reading this stuff and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is literally it. I complimented your snail one time and I think I might have DM'd you about a bag that I saw at a convention. And you were at the convention and and I walked through the vendor hall and I was like, wow, you have really pretty bags because one of them had my character on it. And I was like, that's so cool. I think I might have taken a picture of it. And then I was like, hey, how do you sell your bag? I think I DM'd her of like, hey, how do you sell your bags? Like, I might have wanted to retweet that or promote that at some point, right?
There is one last thing I would like to share with you, because if there is one thing that I think verifies my suspicion of all of this, it would be this. Ian has been known to reach out to content creators who have spoken about Black Griffin or at least has worked with them. It's been speculated, though not confirmed, that he spoke with the Living Tombstone to have their collaboration with Gabe removed from their channel. But I can't say 100% if that's a fact or if that's true. That's just hearsay. What is not hearsay is the fact that I have spoken to Ian. 5 days after my Black Griffin video went live, he reached out to me. I have held back on talking about this because I'm the type of person who, if you tell me not to say shit, I won't. The only time I have broken this rule is with the clips from Bonk's interview, because I don't have to keep my word to a full-con creep that's into cartoon children. But otherwise, if we are having like a private conversation and you ask me to keep it private, I will keep it private. In the past, when content creators leak DMs or talk about a private conversation publicly, they're usually seen as a massive asshole for leaking private chats, things the public does not need to see. And because I at least have like a baseline respect for privacy, I try to respect when people revoke their consent for private conversations to be out in the public. When I heard that recording of Ian being verbally aggressive towards Claire, I blocked him and I deleted all of our messages. I wanted nothing to do with him. I have tried to get like data retrieval from Instagram to see if I can get these messages again, but I couldn't do it. I can't retrieve the messages, and since Ian has asked not to show anyone those messages, I won't, because regrettably, I can't. That was so stupid of me. I should have gotten the screenshots and whatever to verify, but I didn't. I can tell you what I said though, from memory, mind you, because we had a total of 2 correspondences. Regretfully. I didn't know if Ian was abusive or not. I was a bit more cordial than I should have been. This is mainly because I thought if he's at least willing to actually reach out to me and talk to me, maybe I could hear his side of the story, and maybe the claims of abuse are just a narrative, or something that's not true. You know, as a groomer tactic to keep Claire away from him. But interestingly, Ian wouldn't confirm nor deny the claims, and just kept telling me that he didn't want it to be known that he was involved with any of this, and to please tell no one that we ever spoke. This should have been a red flag, but maybe he was just trying to rebuild his family, I suppose, and I just didn't want to get in the way of like a grieving father and get involved in like someone else's family drama, so I just let it be. It was none of my business. It's not my family, not my fucking circus. I was nice to Ian simply because I'm just kind of baseline friendly with everyone who talks to me about my videos. That's what our first conversation was about. He basically just wanted to text me, be like, I liked your video, and I also liked that little skit you put in it. Thank you, you know? At that point, I think I did apologize to Ian because I said something that was like insinuating that Ian passed his daughter around to both Mando Pony and Gabe. And I said,
you know what? I think Claire might have had a point. If my father allowed me to be around 2 men who were into little girls a little bit too much, I don't think I would talk to him either.
Just add that into the pile of regrettable things I said in that video. But yeah, I wanted to apologize for insinuating that Ian might have trafficked his daughter to creeps. I thought saying that was a little bit too far. Along with like a bunch of other things I said that were too far. I just wanted to wish him and his family well, like, hope y'all are doing good. I also was maybe hoping for an interview. I didn't like want to bombard him with one, but was kind of hoping that he could answer some questions if it wasn't too much to ask. I should have been like more direct about it, but like, this is like a seasoned voice actor. I was a bit shocked that he'd even reach out to me in the first place. But Ian wasn't interested in keeping in constant communication with me. He asked me not to tell anyone that we ever spoke, or show anyone our conversations, and that he didn't want to be on record or anything, because he didn't want people to know that he was involved. Well, you know, seeing as he is openly following the people who are involved and is talking to me directly, that's obviously not true. He is very much involved. And the second conversation was after KP's video. And all it was just talking about how bad the video was, and that he hoped the victim was okay, and how much this has personally affected him with how Saber has openly attacked him. So I am just guessing that he was really banking on this being true, especially since Ian follows a Saberspark parody account called Saberfart on Twitter, which is super mature for a 60-year-old man. And that was it. Our 2 conversations was just, hey, I thought your video was good. Man, KP's video sucked. And that's it. Also, please don't tell anyone we talked or whatever. Now, if I had listened to that recording beforehand, would I have ever entertained talking to this guy? Fuck no. But his conversations with me did end up turning the cogs in my head and making me concoct this grand conspiracy. Like, if this guy was willing to reach out to me, some fucking stupid internet rando who talks about Netflix movies for a living. If he was willing to reach out to me, who's to say he hasn't spoken to Bonk and Sophie? And it was when Claire said this.
I don't know if my own father has talked to either of them, but I do know that my dad has reached out to people that I've worked with and warned them about me when I had told my parents that, you know, I was in a relationship with Gabe.
That it all just clicked. Amy, Bonk, and Sophie have always been in contact with each other. And although I do believe that Bonk had at least initially worked on his own in the beginning, he also mentioned people reaching out to him who were silenced by Gabe and Claire over the years. And I have no doubt in my mind that either Amy has reached out to as like a secret mouthpiece for Ian, or Ian has been directly in contact with Bonk. This whole thing, at least the rumors about Claire, they all come from Ian. It's always been him. How long has it been him? I don't know, I'm not too sure. But I know damn well that this idea that Ian is just removed from all of this isn't fucking true. He told me he was personally involved in all this. He knows all this stuff. He's been following it from the start. If there is one thing I think should deter you from listening to Bonk, Amy New, or Sophie Scruggs at all, aside from them all being, kind of insane, is the fact that they are mouthpieces for Ian James Corlett. And Sophie and Amy might not ever admit this, but ladies, I know exactly where your barking orders are coming from. You're trying to slink away now and just try to avoid talking to me altogether, but you don't get to fucking run. Not after the shit you pulled. You've taken the side of an emotional abuser, proven so solidly, than you do with the people that you claim are victims that you say that you care about. You don't care about victims. You never cared about victims. All you cared about is sucking up to industry voice actors like Ian or Peter New, who is also under scrutiny for apparently saying inappropriate things to underage girls.
And I think that's also really funny, considering Peter New is somebody who has said inappropriate things about girls who are underage.
You're not protecting. You're projecting. And you know what the worst part is? The worst part is that people like Sophie, Bonk, and Amy, they are weaponizing their black and white thinking. Here's the thing. No one wants to stand by an abuser. People want to believe victims because people who lie about sex crimes and abuse, that's rare. And you'll see this when Bonk fights with people. If you disagree with his claims or ask him questions, he calls you a defender of groomers and rapists. And since no one wants to be that guy who stands by a rapist or a groomer, and they want to believe victims because victim blaming and being dismissive is shitty, they'll just take your word for it. This doesn't just expand to randos on Twitter. This applies to Claire herself, because now she's equally as bad as everyone who stands by Gabe. She's a groomer apologist and a defender of an abuser. And somehow you saying that isn't also treating victims like shit? If you see Claire as a victim, why are you allowed to toss her to the side when she doesn't agree with you? And that's totally fine. But when people ask questions regarding Destiny's claims or the Snapchat victim, you dismiss that as victim blaming and defending abusers. Why are you allowed to toss Claire to the side and ignore her victimhood when it comes to her father, but no one is allowed to bring their concerns about your investigation without being accused of tossing victims to the side? You're abusing people's kindness. You're abusing people's care for victims and forcing their arm behind their back because apparently Amy, Bonk, and Sophie are the only true advocates for victims. They're the only ones who are doing what's right by them. What Destiny and the Snapchat victims should do is rely on Rain as a resource instead of Brody Fandote and co. Yet that suggestion gets shot down by Bonk. He was apparently angry that people would suggest Rain at all, as he dismisses the idea that Rain is the only solution, which no one was saying that. He apparently also had no idea what Rain even was. An advocate for sexual abuse survivors has no idea what resources are out there besides law enforcement, and he doesn't think that's a problem. The biggest upside for those who utilize Rain over Brony Fandon't is that at least Rain won't use victim stories as weapons. If you want to know what the biggest issue with this entire initiative is, it's that they don't stand by shit. They say they stand by victims, but they also treat those they see as victims like dog shit. They say that they hate pedophilia and children being sexualized, but defend Fullcon and Wootmaster. They say that they all come from abusive homes and take accusations of familial abuse seriously, but then take all of their barking orders from an abusive father. Even if these people make arguments I agree with, even if they do listen to victims and give them support, the bare minimum, it's based purely out of their own self-interest and not because they genuinely care. And also, another side note, these people are screaming about accountability, but they don't even know what that would even look like. Like, what do these people want? Do they want Gabe and Claire to get divorced? What the hell is that gonna do? How would that make anything better? Bonk took something that I cared about, something I was passionate about, that affects people in my real life, and he went on a crusade for himself. Not for Destiny, not for Anon. It was for him. And for what? some parasocial relationship, some need for some brony fame, some entertainment? Maybe. I don't know. But what I do know is that you've made it so much harder for victims. People will give little to no charity to victims coming forward, all because of people like you. The conversation around these stories have become so toxic, of those playing into the perfect victim narratives to demanding things out of these victims that would be impossible. And if they don't have that on hand at that moment, they're liars just looking to farm clout. That's not every single victim, though. That's not the goal of everyone who wants to speak up. But because of people like Bonk, they will have to fight so much harder to be believed and discredit the idea that they're doing this for clout or to ruin people's lives. And it's all your fault. You are so busy pushing for some sort of victimhood from Claire and Michelle that you didn't bother aiding in Destiny's allegations when her identity was exposed and then she got cannibalized. Because you never cared about any of these people. It was only ever about either satisfying Ian's ego or satisfying you. Not everyone who cares about the Black Griffin story is like this. There are people who genuinely are concerned and care. I cared. And if you do care about stories like this, if Destiny and the Snapchat victim are adamant in their allegation, please rely on resources that will actually do the right thing the right way and actually give a shit. Because if you continue to rely on Brony Fandom as your source, you'll never see justice, you'll never be believed, and you will only be used as a shield. Don't let him do that to you. Bonk, if there is any part of you that cares about this genuinely, step down from the story. You will stop making yourself a mouthpiece for Ian James Corlett, because the only saving grace with you is that I'm pretty sure you're so mentally unstable that Amy and Sophie see you as the perfect person to manipulate into doing their bidding, or at least Ian's bidding. Bonk seems so loyal to them when the truth may be that his stupidity is being used against him. Bonk, I beg of you, for the sake of yourself, for the sake of the victims, hang it up. For once, this would actually be the one helpful thing that you do. Well, that was cathartic. But the question is, what now? While an apology is great, and while giving you the true picture is very important, you guys are going to want to see change. There has to be change. Otherwise, I risk this happening again. I've been doing this whole content creation thing for 5 years, and within those 5 years, I got rusty, and name intended this time, I got lazy. This is what I'm going to do to avoid this from happening in the future. Any stories I talk about involving like abuse or sex scandals or relationship scandals may be little to non-existent going forward, as I haven't exactly shown to be the most responsible in regards to these stories. There's a few that I have in the back catalog that I might consider talking about, but that's gonna need like a whole team behind it, and it's not just, you know, me by myself, where mistakes can at least be caught. I will be putting a team of researchers together. It'll be mostly like on a volunteer basis, and it won't always be needed. It's just for the stuff that needs that extra hand. I also have made a lot of connections through this story that have proven to be like reasonable researchers and investigators that I heavily respect. So they will also be like more heavily relied on when needed. I will also be doing more interviews. As I've self-admitted, I'm not good at interviews. I don't feel like I ask the right questions, or I can be a little too charitable and don't push back as much as I should, or I kind of just treat it like a convo with a friend. But that doesn't mean that I should just throw my hands in the air and just be like, well, I guess I'm just really bad at this. I should just never do it again. It comes with practice, and it comes from experience, and it comes from listening to others and just learning. I will also be maintaining my removal from Twitter and Twitter likes from my life, as it is better for my mental health and sanity. However, a lot of the reason I didn't know about a lot of this stuff is because, you know, Bonk and Amy and Sophie, all those people are on Twitter, and I don't have a Twitter. If I did, it would have solved all my problems. A part of the investigative team going forward is actually, you know, having those who do use Twitter helping in that regard, so that I don't miss anything. I would like to shift content into a different direction, something that's a little low risk. This channel has been mainly about like my hyperfixations, and a lot of my hyperfixations have been on like dark shit like this. And it's been like this for so long. It's because I care about this stuff. I care about it enough to own up when I am fucking up. I should know better if I care about this, so I hope the changes will make content more solid and age better. I would like to thank some of the people who have helped in this process. Beckett, thank you so much for hearing me out and having that conversation with me and reaching a positive consensus with each other. I hope you guys will give his content a chance. He's definitely a lot edgier than what you're used to over here on this channel. And he's a bit of a drama farmer, but like, he's sane, which is rare in the grand scheme of the story, so I appreciate that. I'm happy that our perspectives of each other were totally off. I hope that we can continue to at least be friendly in the future. I would also like to thank Mr. Enter and his team. That includes Wes, Coda, Maddie, Graceland, Chico, and Phineas. Getting to chat with everyone and give each other feedback and advice, I think it was good in keeping each other sane, so thank you so much. I would also like to thank the Op Block. I wasn't aware that he was one of Beckett's researchers, but I have since then gotten the chance to speak to him. Seems really chill. He had criticisms of me that were also not very nice, but honestly, seems like a pretty cool guy. So thank you so much for at least having that conversation with me, especially on live stream. That was completely random. Oh, how the turns table. I would also like to thank the friends and family that were a huge help in removing myself from the internet to just enjoy things in the real world, you know, things that actually matter. It's a good reminder that, like, there's an entire world out there that exists, and that's the one that probably will be more impactful in the long run. You know, taking breaks and giving myself time offline to breathe is so important. So, you won't be named, but you know who you are, so thank you. And once again, for ever entertaining this entire shit show and giving it any platform. I'm so sorry. To Claire, to Michelle, to Saberspark, I wish you nothing but peace. And I hope showing you who Bonk really is exonerates all of you. I am really so sorry. Going forward, I hope that content will continue and you guys continue to stick around. But if anything during the duration of this video has disappointed anyone and it's not possible for you to support anymore, it's completely understandable. I totally understand. I would like to grow and work towards a team that'll keep our promises for not just, you know, content improvement, but personal character improvement as well. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry that this was long and tedious, but I appreciate anyone who watched until the very end. I hope you have a great day, and please continue to support organizations like RAIN, whose donation page will be linked in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day.